The board will now come to order. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Schweitzer. Alderman Oldenburg. Alderman Cone. Alderman Narayan. Alderman Devoti. Alderwoman Velazquez. Alderwoman Sanye. Alderman Browning. Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. Alderwoman Keys. Alderwoman Tyus. Alderwoman Boyd. Alderman Aldridge. President Green.
Present.
Alderman Cone. Alderwoman Sanye. 13 present. You have quorum.
A quorum being present, we will be led in opening prayer by Pastor John Watson, Jr.
We'll quote from the Holy Scriptures. Do what is right and good in the Lord's sight, so that it may go well with you. Gracious God, Heavenly Father, with lifted hearts, we pause at the beginning of this session to lift our thoughts to you. Our hearts are open. All our desires are known by you. There are no secrets hidden from you. On today, inspire the thoughts in our hearts by your Holy Spirit, that we may love you more, serve our city fully, and guide our citizens more diligently. During this day of deliberation, allow all our problems we face be handled within the framework of cooperation and goodwill. Give our leaders wisdom and strength to uphold what is right and stand by what is true, that they may follow your will and fulfill your purpose concerning our great city. Into your hands we commit ourselves, our family, our city. Amen.
We will dispense with the regular order of business to take up the courtesy resolution calendar. Alderwoman from the 6th, you are recognized on the motion to suspend the rules for the purposes of introducing Resolution 9.
Thank you, Madam President. I move to suspend the rules to introduce Resolution 9.
It's been moved by the Alderwoman from the 6th, seconded by the Alderwoman from the 10th, that we suspend the rules for the purposes of introducing Resolution number 9. This is a non-debatable motion. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Schweitzer. Aye. Alderman Oldenburg. Alderman Cone. Alderman Narayan. Alderman Devoti. Alderwoman Velazquez.
Aye.
Alderwoman Sanye. Alderman Browning. Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. Alderwoman Keys. Alderwoman Tyus. Present. Alderwoman Boyd. Alderman Aldridge.
Aye.
President Green.
Aye.
Alderwoman Sanye. 12 aye votes and 1 voted present.
With that, you have sustained the motion from the Alderwoman from the 6th. Alderwoman from the 6th, if you would like to approach the dais for the presentation of Resolution number 9.
The resolution is literally hot off the press over here. We've snuck in a couple of Garrett's siblings. I also want to say thank you to my colleagues for contributing to a beautiful resolution. Madam Clerk, can you please read Resolution 9?
Resolution 9, honoring Garrett Allen. Whereas Mr. Allen began working his first public service role by joining the City of St. Louis on May 8, 2023, eventually serving Wards 6, 4, and 8. Whereas Mr. Allen will now continue his quest to better the constituent service process and unsticking untold numbers of Citizen Service Bureau service requests citywide by joining Mayor Carl Spencer's administration on Friday, April 25th, 2025. And whereas Mr. Allen's journey to help people began at a very young age when his obsession with volcanoes grew him into aspiring to be a volcanologist with the goal of keeping people safe. Whereas before his time at the Board of Aldermen, Mr. Allen's combined love of politics and running helped him to become one of the most effective canvassers in local St. Louis politics because he was able to hit the doors in record time. And whereas Mr. Allen, a May 2022 graduate from Washington University in St. Louis with a bachelor's degree in international relations with minors in both English literature and Spanish literature, and a 2-year college-level experience in molecular biology and microbiology, and the son of a poet English professor, has been sought out throughout City Hall for his line editing skills, well-written letters of support, and thoroughly researched resolutions. And whereas Mr. Allen applied his love of microbiology and process to create a lab, notebook-inspired, spreadsheet-based operation system for his meticulous intake, tracking, and follow-up on every constituent case and its progress across city departments for wards he served, known as the BOSS, Big Operational Supreme Services Sheet. And whereas Mr. Allen faithfully and enthusiastically served the Lindenwood Park neighborhood in the 4th Ward, which he had the most service requests citywide. Whereas Mr. Allen handled more than 865 cases in the 6 wards in less than 2 years, unfreezing hundreds of complicated cases that had been stuck in the bottomless pit of CSB, from complicated sewer lateral cases to abusive landlords to neighbor disputes and much more. Whereas, when asked about his job at the Board of Aldermen, Mr. Allen once said, "It requires a lot of detail, efficiency in work, and a listening ear. It is an up-close view of the American democracy in action and all its false glories and promises." And whereas, from Shem Saba and Big Ed sausages to beignets and Bon Bois, Mr. Allen's hunger and exploration of new, exciting foods is only surpassed by his appetite to know new and exciting people. Whereas during his nearly 2 years at the Board of Aldermen, Mr. Allen exhibited Leslie Knope's-ish attitude to getting things done on a daily basis, and whose work values could be summed up in one of her quotes: "Now go find your team, get to work, whatever that work is that you find worth doing, do it, and find people who love to do it with." Whereas we will miss Mr. Allen's positive can-do attitude in room 230, his love of crafts, facts of the day, and Monday curiosities, we celebrate his move to room 200 to work with Mayor Spencer on delivering services to the entire city of St. Louis. Now, therefore, be it resolved by this Honorable Board of Aldermen of the City of St. Louis that we pause to honor Garrett Allen, Executive Secretary of the Board of Aldermen, for his services to the Board, our city, and our community. We further direct the Clerk of the Board to spread a copy of this resolution across the minutes of the proceedings and prepare a commemorative copy to such that it may be presented at a time and place deemed appropriate by the sponsor. Introduced this 21st day of April, 2025, by the Honorable Daniela Velazquez, Alderwoman of the 6th Ward, and the following alderpersons: Ann Schweitzer, Thomas Oldenburg, Shane Cohn, Brett Ryan, Matt Devote, Alicia Sanye, Michael Browning, Shamim Clark Hubbard, Laura Keys, Pam Boyd, Rasheen Aldridge, and President Megan Green. Adopted this 21st day of April 2025.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Garrett, obviously, you're the crowd. I don't even know what to say. I think my biggest say is thank you. I tried to write a resolution, or we tried to write a resolution that is hopefully as good as one that you would write, and it honors you. But mostly, thank you for your commitment to hard work, your enthusiasm, even on the days where I came to work frustrated or maybe disappointed. Your enthusiasm and desire to make sure that residents had just a good experience when calling up the city helped me, inspired me. So why I am a little mad at the mayor for taking you. No, I know that what you'll do will benefit the residents of the entire city, and for that, I'm glad and grateful.
Staffers, alder people, it was a pleasure to work with you. To serve the city, to serve the state, to serve the cause of democracy in the United States. I hope we continue our work together. My door, my very small door, will be open to you. And I'm looking very much forward to seeing the work that we can continue to do together, the new 14-person Board of Aldermen for the city. We're moving in the right direction. I know you know that, and I'm excited to continue that with you.
Any further discussion? Alderwoman from the 10th.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. Garrett, I hate to see you go. What I do want to offer is a friendly amendment to that resolution, because the 26th ward was blessed by Garrett's enthusiasm, commitment, work ethic, example as well at one point, before we got to the ultimately wards that you mentioned in the resolution. So I would be remiss if I didn't thank you on behalf of the former 26th ward and now myself here as the 10th ward, because listen, you have answered calls still in your the wards that you serve now for the 10th ward, and I don't take that for granted either. So I know you're going to be amazing in your new position at the mayor's office. I wish you Godspeed. You know I say it all the time, and to your family, I feel like I know you all already. Garrett works, his office is right outside of my office, so I hear him and we often talk about his love for his family. You all are definitely a blessing to each other, and I just want to wish you all well and you well as well in your new journey. Good luck.
Alderman from the 3rd.
Thank you, Madam President. Garrett, congratulations on the new role. When we hired you down here at the Board of Aldermen, I think it was pretty much a consensus when we made that decision that, one, you're eminently qualified for the role that you are taking on here at the board, but two, that we also wouldn't have you for very long. We all felt like you were tremendously overqualified for the work that you were doing down here, and thought that you have such tremendous potential to grow not only in your role down here at the Board of Aldermen, but to better serve our city in other positions. So very happy that you're starting to realize that potential moving into your new role in the mayor's office. You'll be greatly missed over here, and we welcome you to come back and look at anything that you want to make more efficient anytime you want. But we hope that you continue to bring that same level of professionalism, enthusiasm, and passion for the city of St. Louis and the mayor's office and for the rest of your journey in your career. Congratulations.
The 4th.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. Garrett, it's been just awesome working with you over the last couple years here. You know, we often talk about just the idea that one of the wrong things that government does is just say, well, that's the way it's always worked. And you came in with kind of some big ideas on ways to change things, make things more efficient. And I was hoping that you were going to be successful. And it turns out that, you know, you were able to implement a lot of those changes. And I always knew when I handed a constituent off to you that not only were they going to be in good hands, but that ultimately the issue was going to be resolved. When you called me and told me that the mayor had offered you a job, my first thought was like, along with the Alderwoman from the 6th, I think. Like, dang it, Kara. But then, immediately, as the Alderman from the 3rd said, I know that when you came in here, that the goal was always to look to make this place more efficient and to work better and to do the work the right way. And you've done that, and I think you're being rewarded for that by moving over to room 200. And the nice thing is that even though it's lousy for me and the Alderwoman from the 6th, I think we're the only two people that really suffer here, because it's going to be better for literally all of the residents of the city that you're going to be where people land. And I know that the people of the 4th and the people from the 6th will be getting referred over to your desk when we can't get things figured out here. So have no fear. You'll still be hearing from folks near me, I feel sure. And thank you for your time here, and all the best over in room 200.
Alderwoman from the 1st.
Thank you, Madam President, and members of the board. Garrett, you are going to be so missed down here. I think that is just very clear from all of us today. It's not a surprise, as the Alderman from the 3rd said. I think we all knew we'd have you for a short time. There's no way that you're going to be moving up to bigger and better things. So I'm very proud of you and impressed by all you've done. I got to be right outside your office, so I was often privy to a lot of Garrett-isms, and my absolute favorite would be when he would say, "I'm going to put the full power of the Board of Aldermen behind this request." And every time you said it, it just made me so happy, because I knew that really the full power of the Board of Aldermen in this case was just your tenacity and everything that you were going to do to make whatever that constituents' need was fixed as soon as you possibly could. And so we will miss that power behind the Board of Aldermen, but I am just so happy that it's moving to the mayor's office. But Mayor Spencer already making some moves on the Board of Aldermen, so we'll see how that works out. Thank you so much for all you've done. Appreciate you.
Alderwoman from the 12th.
Madam President, I believe the Alderman from the 14th was up before me. So
I'll yield to you.
Okay, thank you. First of all, I would like to have my name added to the resolution.
Madam Clerk, please make note of that.
Also, I was on personnel when Garrett was hired. It was when the president just became the president. There was some nonsense about he's too qualified and he won't be here long. And there was enough people probably to stop you from getting hired. I was not one of them. I went against all my friends and people who said that and said that is ridiculous. I don't care who his political affiliation is, and I don't care. I hate that term, overqualified. When I got out of law school, that's what I was told sometimes by people that I interviewed with. So I didn't get to work with you much, but I absolutely want people who are overqualified and who are dedicated to getting things done to work for the city. They don't have to agree with me. They don't have to support the candidate I have, but to be able to say, let's not hire him because he may not be here, you don't know that. You have no idea the commitment of people. I actually have a JD from Washington University, but if you ever hired me to paint or clean behind your bed or something, I am such a fixated person in this place. I will clean behind your bed better than anybody. So I like people who are like that, okay? And I appreciate your efforts and your commitment to the city. I think that the Mayor Spencer is getting a great person. From what I can hear from everybody else, I knew that from when people said you're overqualified. Anybody that tells me somebody is overqualified, I want to hire those people. So thank you. You don't have to stay at the Board of Aldermen to give service. You go into a different office to give service. Thank you very much. I appreciate your service. And hopefully you'll do great things in the mayor's office as you did at the Board of Aldermen. Thank you.
Alderman from the 14th.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. First off, Garrett, this is your day, and this is about you. And I just want to say, thank you for coming down to the Board of Aldermen and just the amount of work that you've done in your role. I'm about 2 offices behind you, but I also get to hear every time you get done with a constituent, like another one down and then on to the next caseload. I'll miss the moments of you and our financial analyst, Mr. Combing, having our jokes. But I will say you took this role and you created it your own. At some point, I think some members of personnel was like, well, he's going above and beyond what this role is, and I would just see how you turn this role into you looked at city residents as a customer. You looked at them as individuals that you wanted to serve, and you wanted to make sure that you figured out how to make sure that their solution was solved. I know the alderman from the 4th and the alderwoman from the 6th are saying they're mad, but I could tell you, I know the alderwoman from the 6th is really going to be upset about this because she do not play about you. She talks very highly about just the systems you set up in place, your master spreadsheet that you have that, again, I was like, Jesus, he don't mess around, but I appreciate you also stepping up and when other alders needed support, including myself, because one thing I love about this board is, the staff is a team, and just because one executive secretary may be out, others always step up, and you've done that within my ward. So I just want to thank you. You say the doors are small over there in 200, but the work that you're going to put in is to make those grand and big. So I look forward to coming over and bugging you and waiting for you to open up that door to just check in on you, and I'm just so proud that I've been able to get to know you and proud that you've been able to uplift the bar here at the Board of Aldermen when it comes to constituent services. So onward, today is your day. Congratulations. And I look forward to seeing you in your next role, and we'll be reaching out to you. So thank you.
Alderman from the 9th.
Garrett, what can I say that everyone else hasn't already said? I'll say this. I think you came down to our body to do work to help people. And I know you're going on to the mayor's office to do the same thing. I know that all of our staff are here for the same reason, which is to make sure that we are delivering services to the people of the city when they are stuck, they don't know who else to turn to, and as a last resort, because they know they've already called other people by the time they've called us, they get to you and they get their problem solved. And I know you're going to carry that on to the mayor's office. We are going to miss you so much here, but it's going to be so much fun to watch you continue on, and I know your future is bright no matter what you decide to do.
Any further discussion? Alderwoman from the 7th.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I just wanted to also make sure I give my well wishes to Garrett. The alderwoman from the 1st ward stole my quote. That's my favorite quote as well. It just sounds so powerful and tenacious. I love it every time I hear it. I think you've done a great job since you've been here, and I hope that you feel just really supported and valued. And I'm also going to do what some of my other colleagues haven't and say, like, you're so stellar, you're so great, you've learned so much. I know you've got to get settled into a role, but I think at some point we should talk about what it might look like to get like a little booklet from you or something that we can use to pass on to other executive secretaries who would be new in onboarding and just kind of teach them some of your masterful ways. So I'm going to use this moment to plant that seed. And just to thank you again for your work here, but also I'm going to miss the moments where we talk about your book of the week because I'm always fascinated by what you're reading. So I know you'll be right in room 200. I hope we can still have our book convos, and thank you for all of your service here.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Well, Garrett, I want to give you my well wishes to who would have thought that, knocking some doors for a campaign a few years ago would set you on a trajectory of public service. A little known thing about Garrett is that he is a very avid runner. And when he was knocking doors on my campaign, we kept thinking, how is this kid able to knock more doors than anybody else by a long shot? And we kept looking at the data thinking, like, how is this humanly possible? And it turned out, when we asked him, he said, well, I jog between the doors. It makes it go faster. And so he has brought that level of efficiency to the Board of Aldermen to make sure that he's not just working harder, he's working smarter. And I think, to echo what everybody else has said here, we all knew that Garrett would not be here forever. We knew that this was going to be the beginning of a long career for you in public service. And we so appreciate all of your work, all of your ideas, all of your ability to sit down and figure out how to develop systems to make this place run a little bit better. And I am so excited, even though we are losing you, and I'm very sad that we are losing you. I know that you are going on to do great things in the mayor's office and could not be more proud of you. So congratulations. And if we could please meet as a board over on the steps here to take a picture with Garrett.
I can hover. Congrats.
Right. Alderwoman from the 10th, you are recognized on the motion to adopt the courtesy resolution consent calendar.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I move that we adopt the courtesy resolution consent calendar.
It's been moved by the Alderwoman from the 10th, seconded by the Alderwoman from the 7th, that we adopt the courtesy resolution consent calendar. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Introduction of honored guest. Any introduction of honored guest? Alderwoman from the 13th.
Can you hear me? Okay. I want to recognize the residents of the 13th Ward as my honored guests because we continuously fight for the survival of North St. Louis. And so I want them to know, even though we have people that's coming after us, trying to destroy us and keep us from moving forward, you will always be the honored guest of the 13th Ward, and I look forward to another 4 years as your representative.
Any further introduction of honored guests? Alderwoman.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. He just left, but I would like to have as my honored guest Pastor John Watson, who led the prayer this morning. I'm his proud alder lady too, so I guess I'll see him back in the community moving forward instead of up here on the dais, rather. And then I also would like to have as my honor guest something that we did last Monday, but I'm not sure if it was captured, and I want to make sure it's shared, is that we collectively voted on the 4th Poet Laureate for the city of St. Louis, and that is Miss Patience Anderson. So Miss Patience Anderson, congratulations. Sis. Absolutely deserved it. I cannot wait to see what you are going to bring to that position, to that office. I'm going to call it office, a Poet Laureate, and just know that you have our support down here to move it forward. Thank you.
Any further introduction of honored guests? Alderman from the 14th.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. As my honored guest, I also want to have some residents that are right outside of Cass and 17th Street. Just over the weekend, they experienced a large 20-foot deep, 15-foot across sinkhole, and I just want to just thank them for being patient in a time of fear, as that sinkhole is very close to a lot of people's homes. I also want to thank city services for our tow division and our street division for getting out there so quickly to make sure that they try to make that sinkhole as safe as possible, and also appreciate Mr. Dan Gunther, who's a board liaison, for being very responsive in when it comes to the mayor's office. We're trying to figure out how to make sure that the sinkhole, until it gets fixed, was safe for residents. So I just want to have them all as my honor guests today. Thank you, Madam President.
Any further introduction of honored guests? Seeing none, Alderwoman from the 10th, you're recognized on the approval of the minutes from Monday, April 14th, 2025.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I move that we approve the minutes from Monday, April 14th, 2025.
It's been moved by the Alderwoman from the 10th, seconded by the Alderwoman from the 11th, that we approve the minutes from Monday, April 14th, 2025. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Report of city officials.
Report of city officials can be found in A, B, C, and D of the agenda and has been placed in the Google Drive for your review.
Does anyone wish to take any bills or resolutions off of any of our informal calendars? Alderman from the 14th.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I move to place Resolution 1 on the regular reading of
First reading
of resolutions.
Madam Clerk, if you could please place Resolution 1 floor substitute on the first reading of resolutions.
So noted.
First reading of board bills.
We have none.
We can dispense with line item 12, reference to committee of board bills.
We have none.
We can dispense with line item 13, second reading of report of standing committees.
We have none.
We can dispense with line item 14, report of special committees.
We have none.
We can dispense with line item 15, perfection consent calendar.
We have none.
We can dispense with line item 16A, board bills for perfection.
We have none.
We can dispense with line item 16B, report of engrossment.
We have none.
We can dispense with line item 17, third reading and final passage of board bills consent.
We have none.
We can dispense with line item 18A, third reading and final passage of board bills.
We have none.
We can dispense with line item 18B, report of the finally passed and signed by the President.
We have none.
We can dispense with line item 19, first reading of resolutions in reference to committees.
Resolution 1, sponsored by President Green, Alderman Cone, and Alderman Aldridge. Board of Aldermen rules.
Alderman for the 14th, you're recognized on the first reading of resolution number 1, floor substitute.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. Picking up where we left off, I'm actually going to take a saying from the Alderwoman from the First Ward last session. What did you say? You was like, continuing now at the Board of Aldermen, episode 2. So picking up where we left off with the rules, just things I really want to highlight that
Alderman, do you want to make your motion to adopt?
I make my motion to adopt the floor substitute or adopt the resolution number 1.
No, resolution number 1, floor substitute.
Resolution number 1, floor substitute. I move to adopt resolution number 1, floor substitute.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 14th, seconded by the Alderwoman from the 7th, that we adopt resolution number 1, floor substitute. Alderman, you may proceed.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. Again, 2 things that I want to highlight. I think we had a pretty lengthy conversation about the rules. I literally went page by page. Over the weekend, we slowed down the process so that there was a lot to digest during the process when this was brought up. So 2 things I do want to highlight that I think is important that are some, I wouldn't say big changes, but significant changes outside of a lot of cleanup is Rule 43 on page 24 of the red line version. There is a change when it comes to we added the standing at ease. I know we had a discussion about that. I just want to bring that up. That a stand at ease is a 1 hour. That would be the decision of the president. And we put in there recess, meaning the meeting must continue the same day, but it does require a motion. And the last thing that I want to highlight that has been getting a lot of conversation, which I think it's always important to check the record and make sure that facts are out there, is the media credentials. So in the appendix on page 47 is where we start to talk about the media credentials. And I want to be very, very clear, if I wasn't last week, the media access is not trying to bar any media from mainstream TV, newspaper, or citizen journalists from being able to be on the floor of the Board of Aldermen. If these rules are adopted, the rule wouldn't go into effect to May 16th. But more importantly, what this would do is ensure that the Board of Aldermen knows exactly who is down here at the Board of Aldermen, who's on the floor. Each media outlet would need to fill out an application, regardless if you're TV or if you're newspaper or if you're a citizen journalist, to be able to fill out an application stating the name of the applicant, the email, telephone number, social media handle, media outlet, the form of their publication, as well as the publication website. If you are a big media outlet, instead of having to fill out an application for every individual one, they can put it all on all the names of the individuals who would be on the floor on that application, so they don't have to do individual applications for each reporter. As well as citizen journalists will have to also fill out an application to be able to be on the floor. But again, there's been a lot of, I think, misinformation that I think is important that we make clear that the Board of Aldermen is not trying to stop people's First Amendment and stop journalists from being on the floor. But just like in Jeff City and other bodies across this region, they have rules and regulations for media to be able to either be on the side gallery, on the House, or in other bodies where they are designated to be able to access, as well as we have designated spots for our certain media here as well. With that, I will open up for any questions. I know there's plenty of amendments floating around, and open up again for any questions from my colleagues.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Alderwoman from the 12th.
First. Madam President, members of the board, I have many concerns, more as I heard over the weekend, of how these new rules came about. I am always appalled when I find out certain sections of town are left out. I'm always appalled when I find out that we set up a meeting that an alderperson said they couldn't meet. I don't understand why we do this kind of thing. I didn't like it from any other past president's office. I don't like it from this one. I think it is ridiculous. I just told you that probably I had the vote to stop the young man that we are celebrating, and I opposed everybody who was my ally to say that is not a good thing. This is not a good thing for the things that we are doing. I would like to know if the aldermen, and when I say the things we're doing, the leaving out of people, to the targeting of the black female aldermen who represent 90% of the board of the city of St. Louis in North St. Louis. The ones who have stood up and been able to get elected irrespective of who came for them. Who came for them, be it the former mayor, the current president of the Board of Aldermen, the treasurer, could not beat us because the people in our wards have spoken to who they wanted to represent them. So to then have come down on this floor, Board of Aldermen, and then make rules to try to diminish the things that we have accomplished in our seniority and all other kind of things, and to be left out, that reminds me of Reconstruction, after black people were freed. And then we had black people become U.S. senators, and slowly but surely the rules changed so that we didn't have any more black people become U.S. senators. Mr. Brooks became the U.S. senator as a Republican back in the 1960s when I was a little girl, and then no more until Carol Moseley Braun. And they come as these innocuous small little changes, and they're not. They're big changes that affect things. And one of the things that we need is a free media that is free to cover us with our bad behavior, the things that we are doing and trying to act like that we're not, be it racism, sexism, ageism, all of which I have been the target of. So if the alderman from the 14th who is sponsoring this innocuous little rule change would yield, I'd like to ask questions.
The alderman from the 14th yield to questioning from the alderwoman from the 12th.
I do.
Alderwoman, you may proceed.
Alderman, first I want to tell you that today is the first time I ever saw a line copy. Every time I got a copy of the proposed amendments, it was a full copy with no line copies. I've never seen such a thing before, because if you saw my amendment that I proposed and I asked that we put on the drive and on people's desks, it was, this is what it looks like, this is what the change is going to be, and that's some sort of copy that's supposed to be given to people at the time so that they know what you're talking about. Last Tuesday when you were on the floor, I had no idea what you were talking about because I just had a plain copy, and everything that was given to me was a plain copy, not one line copy. When you have that many changes, it is totally ridiculous, impossible to understand what somebody's through. The former alderman from the 22nd ward introduced a bill that says if you bring in stuff like that, you have to do it 24 hours in advance so that people at least have some time to adjust. But to have a set of rules put on this floor, Board of Aldermen, and no line copying, no highlighted, no bold copies, and then to find out people had these little meetings is ridiculous to me. And it is a way to leave people out. And when I find out who was not invited, is racist, sexist, and ageist. And so I just want to keep making that statement because I'm going to address it in a way that you guys are not going to like. You're going to wish maybe it was a little bit more inclusive. I never propose anything that I don't give it to anybody and everybody and include people. That is the way it's supposed to be. This is supposed to be a body that includes everybody. You do not have to agree. You can have your own thoughts. But to have these little meetings and then say, oh, we didn't have a caucus meeting because that was secretive. I've been going to caucus meetings since 1991. None of them have been as secretive as this process. It was not secretive. The only thing that happened is we used to have a Democratic caucus. And we had one member, Fred Heidert, who was a Republican for years, and he couldn't come, but he got all the rules and everything. And then we had an independent that couldn't come. But after years of that, we had all Democrats, and everybody came. And it was no secret. And you came before you came to this floor Board of Aldermen, and you had a chance to discuss what these rules are going to be. Not bring it at the last minute like we did 2 years ago and like we're doing again as some kind of big secret that only certain people know about and other people are left out. And then when you start talking about the transparency, okay, we're going to go ahead and change this. It doesn't change. There's a term in law is called the fruit of the poison tree. When you present something that was poisonous from the first place, you didn't make it better. You can bring all these things forward. It does not make it better. My first question is this. So I'm going to start with media access, but I got at least 50 to 100 questions. I want to know on page 47, media access, what was the whole reason that we all of a sudden need credentials? What made it the impetus of why we needed media access?
Yes. Well, let me thank you, Alderwoman.
I'm sorry, did I request?
You did.
Alderman from
You
the
had
fourth?
already requested.
Yeah. You asked me to yield.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to make sure. Okay. All
So
right.
first, I want to say these actually was in the drive come Tuesday. So these has been the red line version has been in the drive Tuesday, and I stated that when I started last week that this red line version
And I hear you.
was on the drive Tuesday. I know you sent like your amendments the day of, but I did make sure
I
that.
didn't find mine in the drive either, by the way. So something's going on, but I did look for it.
Okay.
But I'm saying even if it wasn't, when they passed it out on the floor, I should have got it. I didn't get it then either, but okay.
Yes, ma'am. And I you know,
I
our
would
clerks.
never say that if I had access to it.
I hear you, and I just know this is in the drive Tuesday, and I would never spring not a red line version on anybody if I'm making changes to the bill. But to your point about the media access, there's always, or what was your question? I had want to make sure that we was clear that this was already in drive. But what was your question again?
This is already what?
Go ahead. What was your question? I'm sorry.
You said you wanted to make sure that I understood that this was already the what?
In the
bill?
drive. I know you had said it wasn't, but we passed that.
Mine was, why did we need an immediate access for credentials all of a sudden?
I wouldn't say it's an all of a sudden thing. Apparently, media access was always in our past rules that the media was allowed to be on the floor, is what I heard.
No,
but
what you heard. Let's talk to the person.
Okay, I'll let you go.
That is not true. And in fact, I can produce rules from 1991. There were some things, it's not media access where you got to have things. We started pushing back because media was creeping up on us on the floor.
Which is a problem.
The one.
Which is a problem.
I used to have a line of media, and the alderman from the 22nd said, "Oh, you have all these people." I never asked for that. The media can tell you I hardly ever called them. They called me because I have a long-term history. So that was not true. We were not trying to restrict the media. We were just trying to give us a chance to finish our business and that they not come on the floor. And that was something I could support. What I will not support is any kind of thing that prevents the media from covering this bad behavior down here.
Yes, and that is not.
And if anything, I'm going to invite the media, whoever you can't come on the floor, you can be my special guest at any time because I will let you sit on the floor with me. Because this is ridiculous to me, and I don't like it in any kind of way, and I've been long-term a person of that. I just didn't want them to bother people when I don't even like people to talk to me when I'm listening. When I'm listening to you, I'm like this.
Yes, ma'am.
And I don't like the media to run right on the floor when I'm not putting my stuff together, so I don't like that.
But that has happened.
I don't want to. I know.
That's why I think it's important to have rules.
Not because of credentials, though.
Credentials just mean doing an application. We're not saying you got to go get a badge. We're not saying you got to go get a special button that says Board of Aldermen Media. We're saying fill out an application.
Why?
Because other bodies do it. We need to know who's on the floor.
Okay.
And how we're making sure that we are safe. We are not.
So the media is going to make us unsafe? How is the media going to make us
It's
unsafe?
not saying that the media is going to make us unsafe, Alderwoman. I think it's important to know who is that close to alders and what are they covering, and making sure, not what are they covering, but making sure individuals are. I guess you're yielding. I don't know who I'm yielding to a blank mic.
I'm not yielding. I'm making the point. I'm not scared. I'm the closest of all of you all. I'm not scared. That has never been our
So
problem.
other bodies got it. Other bodies have.
Oh, I'm glad you're saying that. Remember you said that, because when I come back for what other bodies say, then I know you'll be one of the things, because other bodies got a lot of other
Such
things.
as the state house, the House and the Senate has regulations that the media has to provide documentation to know if they're going to be covering elected officials. This isn't, again, this is just saying they have to fill out an application.
An application? Who are we going to fill the application out to?
They would fill it out and they would present it to the clerk.
Is that the part of the clerk's duties? Do we have that in there? Because I've never seen
It's
that.
in the appendix.
The new one. We're adding
Yes.
some duties.
The red line, they will give it to the clerk. Yes,
To the
if they
clerk.
are denied, there's
You
an
said
appeal
we-
process.
Before. So here, my question to you, then it should already be in there if we've had it before. If we're giving the clerk a duty that's new, it's not in there because it was not the clerk's duty. And if we're giving the clerk something that he already had, then it was already in his duties. And I will submit to you, it is not in his duties. And I will submit to you, we did not have application for credentials. I will submit to you, this is because certain people have been getting bad press from the media and they don't like it. And then they try to squash people and think that that is the way you work. That is absolutely
I
not.
disagree, and I think that is bad rhetoric to be said
No,
on the
it's not
floor.
bad, Rick. It's
Because what this
I've
is
been
the,
I've been the subject of it. No, it's not bad
when
rhetoric.
you say people are not wanting media, or could you be more direct? Who don't want? I mean,
Oh, I
could-
can be.
could
You know, I can be.
Yeah,
I wouldn't ask that if I were you.
But has there been any media turned away from this floor in the last
The
week,
media feels
last
like
month?
one of the people that's the media.
One of.
Okay. But he was the one that was felt like targeted, a black male who has been in the media, by the way before you were born, covered this board. And let me say, when I stand up and take up for him, he actually ran a story on me that was 100% false.
I know we talked about it.
To retract it.
Absolutely.
So I'm not protecting him. I'm protecting the concept. He had to retract it 3 times because the former president and some other members of the board put a lie out on me. But I keep, as you know, my receipts, as you all like to say.
Receipts.
And so therefore, within very few period of time, less than a few minutes, he found out that wasn't true. But that still doesn't make you haven't answered my question of, so your answer, I guess, is that other people have it, so we want to have it too. So you saying that the state has it, the Senate U.S. Senate, the House has it, so we want to have it too. Is that it?
And other bodies throughout our region also have credentials, or they have some type of documentation that media has to fill out so that they know who is on the floor, who's
So let's say the name, Elliot Davis. Does anybody down here not know who Elliot Davis is?
But see, that's why I say rhetoric, because again, if
No,
me and you can have a
let's be specific. So let's say the
yeah,
name.
yeah, but we're talking about, and let's have a real conversation. We're talking about somebody who went live on the floor. It's funny that that person can say, I'm banned from the floor while being on the floor, and literally last week when this board was not in, Thursday was on the floor again talking about how he is banned. There is nothing in this, and if you or him can point to me where it says in the document that Elliot Davis or any other journalist is banned, then I will agree with
My
you.
question to you was, when he was on the floor, were we in session?
No.
So people, so again,
But when we was in session, was he on the floor?
talking. You
Go
answer.
ahead, go ahead.
Then my response to you is this. We have press on the floor all the time. We have meetings on the floor. We have lunches on the floor when it's not in. So he was not doing anything wrong. Standing on the floor, he wasn't talking about being banned when we're not out of session. He was talking about being banned when we're in session, because the press comes all the time. I've done interviews with him sitting over there, sitting here. I've done interviews with other people. When we're out of session, there are no rules of the floor that say the press cannot be here. So again, a lot of stuff you may not know, but I've been here and I can provide you with these things.
Always willing to
Nothing
listen.
he was doing wrong to be on the floor when we're not in session.
But he also was on the floor while we was in session. Do you remember that?
That's not what you said. What you just
I'm
said,
saying
I'm
both.
responding to.
He was on both.
Excuse me.
Go ahead.
What you said, and I'm responding to, is that he was on this floor broadcasting live. And then I came back to you and said, were we in session? And you said no. Do I say that he should be able to run around this floor and broadcast live on the floor? Can he, though, tape like that gentleman is doing there? Yes. Can he tape from around these surrounding areas? Yes. That's what the media is doing. That's how they're able to cover us when we're speaking. And we like that when that's good press. But when we don't have good press, we want to get rid of the press. That is part of a dictatorship that I will never be part of. So, again, I will ask you again, because you told me he did it when we were not in session. Now let's hear. You said he also did it when we were in session. Where was he when he was broadcasting live?
Just like our wonderful media right here to the right, he was over in his chair, sitting down, or maybe he was back there at the reserve for press. But the reality is that he was on the floor, in session, and out of session. And I'm confused how our rules, if you could get, again, a point to me where we would be banning him, that would be helpful. So maybe we could fix that if you got an
Let's finish
amendment.
with what you're saying. I asked you why we needed these rules in the first place, and you said first he was on the floor. When I asked you, nope, you don't get to talk. Nope, you don't get to talk. I'm responding to you. I asked you, was he on the floor when we were in session? You said no. And then you said, but did you see when he was on the floor when we were in session? And my question to you was, where was he? Because right now, there is media taping us. We have STL TV taping us. We have Channel 5 right here. And if they bring their camera, there's no rule that says they can't tape us from where they're supposed to be. So where, and when you tell me that he was sitting over there, if he was taping you sitting over there, and what does that say?
Are you relinquishing the floor?
That says reserved for members of the press. So if he was sitting over there, he was well in his rights to tape us or to record us. And if you're trying to keep that from happening, shame on you and anybody else who's trying to do that.
I'm not.
No.
I just don't like lies.
Don't interrupt, because you only have the floor when I give it to you. And if you're doing that, then shame on you. And that's why he thinks he's being targeted, because that's not a good thing. And this is something I learned. I'm going to give you a little hint. The American newspaper used to love Sharon Tyus until Freeman Bosley became the mayor. And then I didn't do something he wanted, which he was wrong, and they hated me. And for years and years and years, they have lied and prosecuted and persecuted. And you know what I do? I don't pay any daggum attention to them, because they can't beat me and never has been able to. And so what I did know that they got more ink than me. And so if I start a fight with somebody that's got more ink than me, that's a whole rabbit hole I'm going down in. And it's not just ink. Now it is media. It is social media. I'm not on a lot of that stuff for a whole bunch of reasons, because it eats up your time. So again, I'm going to ask you, since I have poked holes in both of what you said, because you said Mr. Davis was on the floor when we were out of session, and he was in the appropriate media part when we're in session, and we all know him. I don't believe there's anybody on this floor who doesn't know you paid for it. We joke. You and I sat in the leisure room and joked with him about in 33 years he never could get anything on me, because I don't try to hide what I'm doing. Because if I'm doing something, I'll stand in the middle of Kings Highway and Natural Bridge and say, this is what I'm doing. And if he tried for years to get me to say police shouldn't have to stay in the city. And for years, I gave him an interview saying, yep, they should. And he said, well, don't you think you're bullying the police? And I'm like, no, I'm not. Because if the police want to live outside of the city, let them go get a job where they want to live. And I still believe that. I still hate that we let our citizens, some of the people who work for us, move out the city. So we're wanting to get this media sign up with and give them credentials. The clerk is going to give them credentials. They're going to have to do an application. On their application, they're going to have to put their name, their address, their phone number. What if they're non-affiliate? What if they're somebody that just works for themselves? Do they have to put their first personal phone number so that we will have that? How does that work? Because the people that work for large firms, they can just put KSDK or something, and then KSDK, as I understand it, can give a list of who works for them, and they can submit it. And I'm sure they're not going to get their personal phone numbers. Are we going to require citizen press or people who are non-affiliates, or what's the other term when you're not affiliate? I can't remember it right now. Are we going to require them to then put their personal address, phone numbers, and emails, or how do we do that?
So I would think, like, anytime you fill out an application, you want to make sure you put the best contact down. So if that is your work number, that is your cell phone, that is up to them. We're not dictating if it's their cell phone or the station's number. It's a number that we can contact them at, as well as an email. Just like if you fill out an application, you have the choice of putting the Board of Aldermen number down, or you could put your cell phone. They would have that same choice, just like filling out any application, Alderwoman.
And I'm trying to understand this thing, okay? So cameras. Credential media may still may use still and video cameras only in designated areas on the floor of the chambers and in hearing rooms while the board is convened. And then it says, unless granted permission by the clerk, president, or chair. What does that mean? If they may, then why do we have unless granted permission?
So they would, if they're on the floor, just like now, don't they? They have designated areas, like you went to go stand by Mr. Maxwell. They have designated areas either there, or they would have designated areas behind us. And we put the clerk and the president, because typically the clerk is the one to make sure that if people are coming, if there is media, they usually work with the president's office to figure out what is the best spot for the media to be, if it's on this floor or if it's in the Kennedy room. And typically they are on the Kennedy room, on the right side of the Kennedy room, because we don't have them on the left as people are coming in. They typically on the right. So it's just saying that they will have a designated spot, like they already have a designated spot that says reserved for press there or reserved for press there.
But they can be granted.
Not much of a change.
No, it is, because it says you could be granted an exception. See, that's the part that I don't like. But you could be granted an exception and permission by the clerk, the president, and a chair. First of all, if you're a chair, you're having a meeting. It's hard. If you're having it in the leisure room or the Kennedy room, they are already right there upon you. So there's no need to do that. What that really is keeping the media off the floor unless the president says something. What if the president says no, but the clerk already told him yes? What happens then?
Well, typically, at least I've been down here 2 years. I'm sure you'll explain you're beyond 2 years. I've seen
beyond 2 years?
your time
10,
of being down
11,
here. 10,
12,
13, 14, 15, 20.
Like time.
I love time.
Right. Like
time is short.
2 times 10 doesn't cover it, but go ahead.
But again, this is just giving discretion. Also say if we have a lot of people in the Kennedy room on one area where usually the media can, they sit on the right side, we're not trying to lock them out. If we had a lot of people down here because there was a celebration and we needed to move the media, we're just saying that there is discretion with the clerk or the president to be able to let the media be in a spot so that they actually can cover if they're TV or if they are press.
So my question again is, what if the clerk has already told them no, then the president says yes on the floor? What happens then?
Well, they typically, I've seen, again, in my 2 years, they work together. So
you didn't answer the question.
Well, that's my question.
So you don't have an answer for that.
That's my question. I've seen them work together.
You don't get to do a question. You're yielding to me. You don't get to do a question.
Yeah, you're right. So that's my question.
I know I'm right.
That's my question.
I'm a rules person. So what happens, because when you write rules, you have to write into things. The whole reason of a rule is that you cover those loopholes so they don't be a loophole. So my question is this. What happens if the clerk has already told them yes and the president tells them no?
Asked and answered.
No, I didn't hear. What is the answer?
Again, I've seen them work together, Madam.
You've seen them work together.
So I don't think that would be
That is not an answer. And if a judge was up there, I would say, Your Honor, would you please direct the alderman from the 14th to answer the question? Do you know what would happen if they do not agree? Is my question to you.
Glad we're not in court, but no, I do not.
I know you are. And unfortunately, we make laws that go to court. And then here we are with doing things that we leave loopholes that doesn't make any sense. So I'm going to go back here again to media access to go into effect May 16th, 2025. And is that reason why we have it going into effect May 16th, 2025, so we can actually make up an application?
So that we can work with the media outlets to make sure that they can get the application in so that they can continue to do what they've been doing down at the board by covering us daily through TV, print, or social media.
So do we have an application already?
That is being worked on, Madam Alderwoman.
We don't have an application right now?
That is being worked on.
So we don't have one? It's a yes or no question.
That is being worked on.
So the answer is no, we don't have one. So you cannot share it with me at this point.
No, ma'am, we're working on it.
Thank you very much. Okay, so when you talk about MULT, M-U-L-T, do you mean multiple?
No, that means a box back here. There's a MULT for people use this MULT box back here to connect to. So that's a journalist.
That's the box right there?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Terminology for the TV people.
And when I don't know something, this is what I do. Ask questions and try to make sure I do know it so I don't. See, I'm not afraid not to know.
Glad I gave you an answer, Alderwoman.
Journalists are not permitted to approach alderpersons at the desk or interrupt them during their debate or voting. Alderperson may voluntarily approach the press within designated areas to speak with journalists on breaks or outside the chambers or hearing room. I like that one because a lot of times aldermen go right back there and all the people, and I can't hear, and I'm always shh them because it's very loud, so I do like that.
I heard you do that a few times.
Okay.
And if can I add to that? There has been instances where I think that's important where we have been on the floor and journalists have walked up to our desk during debate, which is a problem.
I don't have a problem with that. I really don't. I told you I was the supportive when we started getting rid of those chairs there, and I was the very person that they were lined up. I don't like that. I like to be able to get my stuff together, and so I don't have a problem with that. I just have a problem if we're trying to keep people out and we're discriminating or we're making something look that is, oh, it's a small thing, but it's something big. And then when I have people saying, oh, we've always done that. No, we haven't. And so I have probably the rules from 1991. You won't see anything like that in there. We didn't actually start doing this, removing the chairs and stuff, to probably in, this is 2023, maybe 10 years or so ago. That's when we started doing that. So before that, we had all those chairs lined up on both sides, and people had, to me, too much access to us. Okay. So the media, once they fill the application out, they will send it to the clerk, and then what will happen?
Once they fill out the application, the clerk would most likely send the information, or he would send it to the personnel committee. So the personnel committee would know who's approved, and that would be worked with the clerk and the personnel.
So it will go to the personnel committee, and the personnel committee could approve or disapprove the application?
No, the clerk will approve it. So it would just be the clerk will approve it, or if it's actually denied, there's an appeal process.
What is the reason that the clerk would deny application for the media? I think that's an awful lot of power for the clerk to have.
After doing his research, he may feel they're not probably a credible outlet, but there is a appeals process that if the clerk denies it, that it will go to the personnel committee.
So what is a credible outlet? So we said we're going to deal with citizen journalists. And I also want to know, I want to have a definition in there of what a citizen journalist is. But let's right now talk about what
it's in there.
Outlet.
It's in there, page 47.
I know I'm going to get to that, but right now I want to
But there's a definite, go ahead. My fault.
It's something in here about credible outlet?
No, about citizen journalists.
Okay, I said I'm going to get to that right
okay,
now.
Go ahead.
Okay, I want to know about what is a credible outlet.
I would say, as far as you're talking about traditional citizen journalists.
Traditional what?
Are you talking about traditional media, or are you talking about?
Oh, I'm talking about, you said the clerk will make a decision, and I said that was a lot of power, and what would he make it on? And he said, well, depends on if it's a credible outlet or not. What is a credible outlet?
I would say our TV stations, our newspapers, the Argus, the American, the Post, St. Louis Mag, TV, Channel 4, Channel 5, Channel 2, Channel 11, PBS. I want to forget the radio, KMOX, our radio folks would be credible outlets. And to be honest, anybody that's probably, covering media that we know are the big typical medias out there.
So independents would not be credible outlets?
I would consider them credible.
What about people who are not affiliated? There are people who go out and get stories.
Like Elliot Davis, I would consider him a credible citizen.
I beg your pardon?
Yes, I would consider them credible.
Then, again, what's non-credible? Because you give me all what's credible, so what's not credible?
I think in this case, we would not be necessarily pushing back on who's not credible. But it's more, again, just to, like Ms. Roslyn Guy, who we've seen on the floor taking photos, it is just to make sure that people that are actually interested in covering the board, we know who are down here, we know who those individuals are. So that'd be
that's not being sold with me. What's been sold with me is that you want to show people you could push back and flex power in the press. And I'm going to tell you again, it is a mistake. It is a mistake you don't have to listen to. It is a mistake. One of the reasons that I have been able to get along with the press is I do not deny them access. If they call me and ask for things, if I have emails or whatever, and then the press can tell you, I will share them with them. I do want them not to approach my desk, but short of that, I don't want to do anything that seems to appear that we want to bridge the press and we want to cut into the right of the press for free speech and to cover us. In fact, as I see what's going down over here, over at this floor, Board of Aldermen, I want them here more and more. So let me ask you a question. Since I can have my own special guest, so what if I have people that you all think are not credible, because I'm going to look for them, and they sit at my desk as my special guest? Can they take pictures from here? Because I've seen other special guests take pictures from my desk. Will they be able to do that?
Are special guests allowed to sit next to us?
Yes. Did you not see swearing in?
On the first day, typically?
It didn't say on the first day. No, we've had special guests.
I was just asking a question.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
They've been able to sit next to us. I don't normally have them because I don't have a lot of special guests. But if I need to, that's what I'll do, because I don't like this rule. And I think it's a mistake. And I think it's meant for another thing. And I think the press hears it to be for something else. And they can't team with you when you're trying to fight against them. And it's irresponsible to try to do that. If you're saying you're trying to get, so you'll know who the media is, I would have to say, let's try to find out who we don't know, because I haven't seen anybody. You said there was somebody down here that was taking pictures that we didn't know who it was. I don't know who that was. When did that happen?
Say that again. I didn't hear you.
I thought you said that we wanted to make sure we didn't have people down here just taking pictures. If somebody was down here just taking pictures and we didn't know, when did that happen?
No, I didn't say that we didn't know. I said we allow individuals to be down here, like Ms. Roslyn Guy, who is taking photos on the first day. But if I can back up to it again, Alderwoman, this isn't, as I've also talked to some of the media over the weekend about this to make sure that this is something that, works, that is not trying to silence them. It is something that is and going back to it, I made a mistake. The application is actually in the appendix. That would be the application that they'll follow. But this is, again...
It's in the rules someplace?
Yes, it is on page 48. I'm sorry. But this isn't trying to stop any media outlet or any one person that you mentioned from being able to be on the floor at the Board of Aldermen. It is just making sure that we have rules and regulations. And I'm also I think each one of these individuals that are here, anytime they call, sometimes I get upset they don't call. But anytime they do call, I always pick up, because I do think it's important to make sure that we allow press to ask the tough questions, to be able to carry stories that also reach an audience outside of maybe we do not have through TV, print, or through other outlets such as radio. But this, again, isn't trying to silence or stop anybody. It is just trying to put rules and regulation. If there's a section, again, that you think is problematic, I'm always willing to see if you have an amendment to try to clean it up to make it better.
I would believe that if I had met with you before when you all were putting this together, but I don't believe that when I hear my colleague from the 11th and 13th and myself be left out of this process. No, I know you don't get that. See, let me say this again. Fruit of the poison tree. You had a terrible meeting leaving black women out. Then you say, oh, we're willing to do whatever. Well, the Alderman from the first already said Tuesday. We have our 8 votes. You really could have just voted Tuesday. It still doesn't.
But we waited Tuesday
What?
so that people can meet.
You do not get the right talk over me.
Oh, you can scream.
Not.
Go ahead.
You do not. You do not. And each time you do it, I will stop you. I'll let you finish and then I talk.
Go
I
ahead.
can just say, you're not going to answer my question.
Go ahead.
My reply to you is that is not a good response when you have left us out. And that's what I want to tell you again. It's called the fruit of the poison tree. You do something that is racist, sexist, and ageist, and then you want to say, oh, we'll just change that if you want to. No, I don't want to. I wanted you to have treated me like a member of this floor of the Board of Aldermen in the first place. I don't want to know that you already got your 8 votes, and then you say, hey, you Negroes over here, you Negro women over here,
Nobody said
now
that.
be included. We will include. That's exactly what you did when you leave 3 black women out. That's exactly it. It is racist, it is sexist, and it's ageist. Oh, and I'm sorry, Granny Caucus. Granny Caucus, Granny Caucus. That's what we've been called, the Granny Caucus. All of you, I better hope that you get to be the Granny Caucus. And by the way, the person who coined that term is now former mayor of the city of St. Louis, because that's not a good term, and we didn't use it. And if we had been out there using it, we got less votes than ever, because black women vote, older black women vote. So Granny Caucus is something I want to be a part of. So I'm looking at citizen journalists must authenticate their status by confirming they are running some form of nonpartisan media that regularly publishes or covers civic or political matters related to the City of St. Louis or the Board of Aldermen. So they have to regularly, what is regularly? Once a month, once every 2 months? What is that?
Regularly.
I love it when people do that. That's what makes people's stuff get thrown out in court. When you have things that are not defined, we're a member of the Board of Aldermen, and we're making laws and rules, and they should be defined. So regularly is just regularly.
It could be. I mean, we have in our Board of Aldermen says we meet regularly. Do you want us to define?
And then it tells us when we meet.
It don't.
Yes, it does.
It says regularly.
It tells us when we meet. It does, just because you haven't read it. And you also need to know it's not just our Board of Aldermen. We have something you didn't know about. It's called the Charter. It does tell us when we meet.
So it says we post to meet on Fridays?
We can have special, oh yes, it does. You just haven't read it. If I was you, I would be very careful. And then it tells us when we special meet.
I don't like being careful.
Okay, I know. You don't know. That's why you're saying that. And if you keep on, I'll read no, I'm not, because I told myself that people are trying to keep me from participating. I will not train them. I will not help them. I will not help them be racist, sexist, and ageist against me. I will continue to fight that. So, again, how can they meet our criteria of what's regularly if we don't know what that is? What is regularly publishes or covers civic or political matters? What if they come down here every Friday or every other Friday and they cover the Board of Aldermen? Is that regularly?
Whenever the board regularly meets, that they will be able to regularly cover the board.
And so that would show that they're citizen journalists.
Point to me where it says must not be an employee of official capacity, political campaign, party, PAC, express political views, public opinions, da-da-da-da-da. Citizen are authorizing firm. They are running some of the nonpartisan media that regularly publishes or civic political matters related to the City of St. Louis or Board of Aldermen. I think that's pretty clear to me. I'm confused at your question.
Yes, point to you what? That's where I literally read it from your amendment. That's where I got it from.
So what I'm saying, what's your question, though?
My question was, if they come here, citizen journalists come here, and they come every week or every other week, and they cover the Board of Aldermen, is that regularly publishes or covers civic or political matters related to the City of St. Louis or the Board of Aldermen? Would that meet the definition?
It's literally, right there. It says if they regularly publish political matters to the City of St. Louis, so they don't have to be the Board of Aldermen or Board of Aldermen.
But I asked if it was just the Board of Aldermen, would that be regular?
No, there's an or, not a.
I understand.
Civic also is.
See, you're trying to run my questions.
No, I'm answering them.
My question is to you, would that be enough to be part of the definition of a citizen journalist if they came to the board and on Fridays covered the St. Louis Board of Aldermen, and they came not every Friday, but maybe 2 or 3 times a month?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That's what. Sometimes they're very easy. You remind me of my husband sometimes when he doesn't want to answer questions.
I feel like that's a compliment.
Gets into that argument. No, it's not what I'm saying. Because then it's not. Because sometimes I tell him I wish he was on the stand so I could tell the judge, please answer the question. Sometimes they're not complicated questions. I'm trying to, since you're the sponsor of this bill, get an idea of what is in your mind of what you think is meeting the criteria.
Absolutely.
Okay, so that's why I'm asking these questions, okay? So how long after there's an application for media credentials will they get a response?
I mean, I know the clerk is usually efficient in getting emails back, but...
How long do you anticipate? Because you can't know for sure.
I would say it's within 24 hours, in my opinion.
So I thought that...
We even get up... I'm sorry, go ahead.
Okay, go ahead. So if the clerk says yes, it doesn't have to go to personnel.
Yes, ma'am.
But if it... remember, I'm telling you literally, I'm just
agreeing to you. Yes, ma'am, go ahead.
Okay, so that's why I'm asking these questions. So usually I would have been at home hugged up with it, okay, and it would be marked and flagged. So if the clerk says yes, then they're good to go. If
Yes,
the clerk says no, then they can appeal to the personnel committee. Is that what happens?
Yes, under credentials, says the clerk shall apply the credential standards, and then it says denial may be appealed to the Personnel Administration Committee within 10 business days by emailing the BOA president at stl-mo.gov. It's on page 47 at the bottom, the appeal process.
But it says 10 days if it goes to personnel, but it doesn't say how long the clerk would have. So that's why I was asking, because you all did a very good job. I like definitions to be defined, then we're not misunderstood. Okay, so if the clerk has it, does he have a day? Does he have 5 days? That's the kind of thing that makes good legislation, okay? So you did good with the part about 10 days, but I think you should have put in there, the clerk has 5 days or something like that, okay? So when I ask these questions, it's not always because of criticism. It's about how do we make sure everybody gets treated the same way.
I understand, and I always appreciate our inquiry back and forth, however they go. I know it's coming from a place of understanding.
Okay, so it's enough about the media. I have other questions, but I don't want to, if other people have questions, I want to yield the floor for a while, and then I'll come back to the floor if you don't mind.
Thank you, Alderwoman.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Alderman from the 2nd.
Members of the board, would the Alderman from the 14th yield for a quick question?
Would the Alderman from the 14th yield to questioning from the Alderman from the 2nd?
I do.
Alderman, I'd just like to pick up our conversation where we left as a potential amendment regarding rule number 6, and if amendment 3, which should be on everyone's desk, would be considered a friendly amendment from you as the sponsor, which is to amend the resolution, chapter 3, rule 6, section 3, as follows, beginning on line 6 of rule 6, following with the words more than, strike out the words, members shall not attend more than 50% of regular meetings remotely, except in the cases of medical disability, period. The clerk shall be responsible for tracking virtual attendance for meetings and reporting to personnel.
Yes, I think your amendment, I remember we talked about this Wednesday, striking out on Rule 6, number 3. I think, maybe another friendly amendment is, to strike that out, number 3, the members shall not attend more than 50%. All of that you're striking out on amendment number 3 to floor substitute, I think is a good amendment, and I would totally accept it.
Great. Madam President, I move to adopt amendment 3, number 3, to resolution 1, floor substitute.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 2nd, seconded by the Alderwoman from the 10th, that we adopt amendment number 3 to resolution number 1, floor substitute. Is there any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, Alderwoman from the 6th.
Like to inquire
Of the Alderman of the 2nd?
Yes.
Alderman for the 2nd, would you yield to questioning from the Alderwoman from the 6th?
Yes, Madam President, I will.
Alderwoman, you may proceed.
Thank you. Alderman, could you just talk about your thought process and why we need this rule?
Talking about my thought process.
Or why you'd like to change this rule, why you're filing this amendment?
I think two main reasons in reverse order of the changes. The clerk has made it clear to the sponsor, and I think to others, that it's a hard process for tracking this, and there's no intention by the clerk's office to actually track virtual attendance. So that would be one, from a practical perspective, to strike that. And I think two, we have invested in so much technology, taxpayers' dollars down here at the Board of Aldermen, to ensure that not only the general public, but aldermen can attend meetings, committee meetings, and regular meetings virtually. We might as well take use of that technology and allow access to folks who have families or have other priorities in the wards, who have other employment, who have maybe medical disabilities, or who have doctor's appointments or other meetings throughout the city. That was my thought process.
Do you think it sends a mixed message to constituents when we're in a time where people are being forced to go back into the office that their public officials are asking not to be tracked and going back to work?
No, I don't think it sends mixed messages.
Thank you.
Thank you.
12.
I'm not supposed to hit this, okay. Madam President, members of the board, if the alderman from the 2nd would yield.
The alderman from the 2nd yields questioning from the alderwoman from the 12th.
I will, yes.
Alderwoman, you may proceed.
Thank you. Thank you for agreeing to yield. So you have been doing Zoom. We've been doing Zoom for some time now because pandemic hit us very hard.
Correct.
I think we started doing Zoom back in 2019 or therefore, someplace there, because Rules did the first Zoom. So has that ever prevented you from, since you're on Zoom, from being able to vote or attend to a meeting by being on Zoom? Does that in any way diminish your participation if you're on Zoom?
No, to the contrary, Alderwoman. I think it enhances and provides access so that there's always a chance that you can join, participate, and more critically, vote.
Okay, exactly. So, and we take attendance at meetings, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And so even if you're in person, some people may come late, the middle of the board or whatever, they're still counted in attendance if they come to the meeting. Is that correct?
Yes, you are correct.
Okay. So if you're on Zoom and the Alderman from the 6th was saying, wouldn't that be sending a mixed message about you're not being there or you're not participating? And you answered, no, it doesn't. And I agree with you. It in no ways prevents me from participating, asking questions. Now, once in a while, it does if there is a technical glitch. Right. But that's not your fault or my fault, is it?
No, it is not.
All right. So other than that, it does. All these people who are talking about wanting participation and wanting to have the woke generation to make sure they participate with anything. In fact, then should be glad that we have Zoom because we spend a lot of money on these things. And so if you're on Zoom, you can do that. The other thing is that they had something in there about you got to give 2-hour notice if you're going to be on Zoom. You might be on your way to the Board of Aldermen and have a flat tire or something else or an emergency. You wouldn't be able to give 2-hour notice. Yeah. So what is the point of a 2-hour notice? As long as you're still on Zoom and you're in the meeting. What's the point for that?
Yeah, I would agree with you, Alderman. I think that's not included in my amendment, but that was also an issue I would take is 2-hour notice. It's probably, my guess is that's just enough time to allow a link to be sent. I think a link can be sent probably with 15 minutes notice, but then again, I don't want to speak for the clerk's office. I think that feedback likely came.
Well, actually, the link that I use is one that they sent me that you can use over and over. So the only time I've ever had to refresh it is being that something was going wrong. But they have the same link. Pretty much if you go to the Board of Adjustments and other things that it's not just the Board of Aldermen, Board of Adjustment, the conditional use, they are all using Zoom. So sometimes I feel like I hear from certain people that they're demanding that people use cursive writing again. And that's one of the things that I always laugh at when people say, well, our kids need to learn cursive writing, is because they don't use cursive writing anymore. And so I don't care if they do cursive writing because they know how to type and to get their messages across through the medium that we have now. And so we're doing can you think of any reason why we shouldn't do Zoom? I'm just asking.
No, I cannot. And what I would say, I think it further underscores often down here, we have called only virtual meetings, special meetings only virtually, right? Because of extenuating circumstances that may physically be existing downtown or at the Board of Aldermen. And I think that's great access that we can all then join virtually and still do the city's business and the people's work. Now, what happens if we don't accept this amendment?
Excuse me. Point of order. Thank you.
Please state your point of order.
They're talking too loud next over here, and I can't hear Alderman down here.
If we could please keep side conversations to a minimum or go out in the hallway. Thank you.
My point I was making, thank you, Alderwoman, was that if we are having an extenuating circumstance and we're joining virtually, and somehow someone has met a threshold of achieving too many virtual meetings, they're not allowed to participate in that day's meetings proceedings. So that's an unintended consequence I just think wasn't thought of. And I'm glad the sponsor has agreed to strike this so that we can all join virtually anytime we want.
And actually, on the amendments that I sent, that was one where I said no, and that it would disenfranchise people, and they didn't give me any reason why it wouldn't. I would, and this is going to be maybe a little unfair to you, but the Alderman from the 11th, myself, and the 13th, we were not invited to the rules. You actually got a call about the rules, right?
I did, yes.
That's my point. And so they're very open because you already had prior knowledge to what was going on, and we didn't. Would you like to be one of the people that didn't get any knowledge of a meeting? Would that,
No,
you think?
no, Alderman. I mean, I think in this day and age, people love to say the word transparency, and then the opposite happens after it. I mean, why not go out of our way just to sit down and have a conversation with everyone? So then, therefore, you can say you did at least that. Exactly. Moreover, it sort of runs parallel with the conversation with here. Just let folks have media access. If there's nothing to hide, there's nothing to hide. Let's not overthink it. I think it applied the same way.
Exactly. So, and I was going to ask you about that media access thing because, like I said, I actually was the victim of somebody who put bad media out on me. We corrected it.
Alderwoman, we are on the amendment at the moment, not on the totality.
Thank you very much. Okay. Sorry. He said something and I wanted to apply. So, only to Zoom, you cannot think of anything that would prevent you from participating if you're on Zoom, however many times you participate, unless there's some kind of technical glitch. Is that correct?
Unless there's some sort of technical failure, I think it provides ultimate access and gives flexibility to not only the public, but to elected officials.
So I want to just share something with you, and I won't say their name unless they start to deny it. So some people who talk about that transparency said, well, we like you down there because I like to be able to get access to you. This isn't about my colleagues getting access or me getting access to you. This is about you representing the people of the 2nd Ward and making sure you're at all the meetings in as many forms as you can. Isn't that correct?
It is correct. I would agree with you there.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Any further discussion on the amendment? Any further discussion on the amendment? Alderwoman from the 7th.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I just, agreed to kind of give my thoughts on this. It's actually been a discussion of some constituents of mine in the 7th Ward who started to ask some really good questions about, like, what are your parameters? I will say, I think ultimately in our kind of role, it is a constituency who decides if that alderperson is showing up enough or not, and you show that at the ballot box. But I also will say that as a city, I think we're having a lot of serious conversations, including some about millions of dollars, including about major infrastructure improvements. And, I wanted to make sure that I just echoed what I hear from my constituents, which is that they do like the idea of me being physically present as much as possible. I think that we've had no problem. I've certainly used the virtual option before, and it wasn't ever an issue. But I do think there's a desire from residents of the city of St. Louis to see their public servants take this as serious as it is. And I think they enjoy seeing some of the interaction on the floor. I think it gives them more context sometimes, especially when we're having tougher conversations, seeing us go back and forth and talk to each other in the moment we're having those conversations. So I just wanted to just lift that up, that I think this is always going to be an interesting conversation because ultimately I believe it is up to our voters and the people we represent to show how we show up and how they feel about that. But I do also hear a voice from them that they want us to be here as much as possible. And I do think the current setting seems fairly reasonable, with it being 50%. I don't think that seems high, and I do, I would hope it would never serve as a barrier. And I think the medical inclusion part is really important because of the pandemic, because of other health issues that are going around. I think that consideration is important, but I think the current rule does try to account for that. And I wanted to just make sure that I add that too. I don't necessarily have a question for the Alderman from the 14th, except maybe, okay, yeah, can the Alderman from the 14th yield?
The Alderman from the 14th yield to questioning from the Alderwoman from the 7th.
I do.
Alderwoman, you may proceed.
Thank you. Alderman, could you just give some clarity to right now? What is the state of this rule? How does this expectation work right now?
Yeah, so what this rule would have done is, to be honest, I got mixed feelings about, striking it. I do think this is something that, yes, we may have Zoom and we have this great technology. I think when we say we spent all this money for it, I think we spent this money to ensure that the people of the public have also another way to access the Board of Aldermen and for us to use it. And we just wanted to make sure that it wasn't overutilized, not trying to police anybody, but also can understand some of the concerns clearly from the Alderwoman from the 12th and the Alderman of the 14th, how it could be used against people, and at the end of the day, if folks, aren't showing up, it'll be up to their community to make, that decision. I do know the Alderman said there's hard to get a tracking mechanism. I disagree with that. We literally, when they call roll call, all these fabulous sheets that we have either at the beginning of the board or in our committee, they are marking who's here and who's not. That could easily go into a spreadsheet. It's 2025. It's, not hard to create a spreadsheet and, calculate, and it calculates itself depending on if they're present or not. But, in trying to work together and come to a consensus, hearing some of the concerns, I think, it will ultimately be up to, the people in their ward to agree or disagree if their alder is overusing the Zoom or not.
Thank you.
Any further discussion on the amendment? Any further discussion on the amendment? Alderman from the 3rd.
Thank you, Madam President. This was one of those rules when we went through the last modification to the rules where we added this because of the technology that was coming before us and also as we were coming out of a pandemic. And yes, part of the reason for the technological advances that we've made down here were to allow us to engage with our constituents more easily. But part of it was also because we were coming out of a pandemic and we literally did not have the equipment necessary in order to meet effectively, efficiently, virtually, and to also allow us the opportunity to continue that work as life and times and other necessary things occur. I agree that our constituents should hold us accountable. I do agree that being in person allows us and affords us the opportunity to be more collaborative, creative, and have those conversations. Not everyone is able to do that in every single place, space, and time. And so having that option available to them is important. When we created this rule, we're trying to come up with some sort of logic as to a threshold so that people would not necessarily abuse that. And even though we had that threshold in place, there might be some times where people might have taken advantage of that, but we don't have any mechanism to police it either. And I think that that's something that we need to be mindful of. There's accountability for each of us, and that comes directly from our constituents. As someone who just got freshly off a campaign trail where one of my opponents was lying about how frequently I was either calling in on Zoom or participating in meetings or votes, our opponents are going to do that and play those games anyway. As someone who last year celebrated their birthday on the first day of session and, had at the time, a scheduled vacation planned down in, Mexico with my partner, I still called in via Zoom. That was an option that was available to me. I spent, 2 days of my vacation on very lengthy meetings down here at the Board of Aldermen, calling in from, during my birthday while on vacation. That was my choice to be there to represent the voice of my constituents. I was proud to do that. I'm, always happy to participate in these deliberative processes. Not everyone's able to afford those same opportunities or be there. And I think, too, one of the concerns that I had with the virtual meetings is that it almost sets an expectation that people don't have an excuse to not be there even when they are sick. And for many of us that support particularly organized labor, being able to take time to care for yourself, whether that's physically, mentally, emotionally, should be valued by people down here. I don't think that this rule or the change of the rules would change any of the dynamic that we have down here currently, whether that's in our rules saying that there's a 50% threshold that some people will abide by, others might not, but then also if they do not, we don't have the accountability in place to actually enforce it, or simply removing it and having accountability, of oneself and, ultimately the voters, because that's really where that's going to rely anyway. So just providing some additional context as to why that rule was implemented, and look forward to the continuing discussion.
Any further discussion? Alderman from the 13th?
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes, there we go.
Thank you, Madam President. Would the alderman of the 3rd yield to questions?
Would the alderman from the 3rd yield to questioning from the alderwoman from the 13th?
Yes.
Alderwoman, you may proceed.
Alderman, I heard you say that when you all, whoever you all are, that discuss these rules change, you all had a meeting. So was this virtual and in person?
Are you referring to the amendment, Alderwoman, or are you referring to my reference to the rules from 2 years ago?
No, I'm referring to the meeting about these rules now.
I don't think I said that in my remarks earlier about the rules before us today, and I have not talked to any particular amendment prior to it landing on my desk.
Okay, so on these rules that you all are presenting today, was it a meeting about these rules?
Alderwoman, I'm not the presenting sponsor of that. That would be the alderman from the 14th. I had one meeting with the president's office that the alderperson from the 1st ward was present for the Sunday before our last, or rather, first meeting.
Okay, so I guess the question I'm asking, because I keep hearing people say about the meeting rules, and so it was certain people that were not at the meeting. So I'm just curious about, how we came up with these, and now we're amending rules that people don't even know about the rules, and I'm just confused. Maybe I'm missing something here.
So I was not involved with the presentation of the rules. That would be the alderman from the 14th who's sponsoring the resolution. I was approached about having a conversation about the rules by a staff member in the president's office, and I met with them. With regard to the amendment that is before us currently, I rose to speak to provide some context on that, but I was not involved in the drafting of that amendment, or I'm not sponsoring it either. The alderman from the 1st is doing so.
Okay, so you're saying you weren't a part of any of the conversation for the whole changing of...
So I had a conversation, but I think the conversation right now is focused on the amendment itself, not the rules as a whole. I was not part of the conversation around this amendment. I had a meeting prior to our first meeting relative to discussion of the rules with a staff member of the president's office and the alderman from the 1st ward, or I'm sorry, 2nd ward, and that's the extent of the conversations that I had, except for some text messages.
Okay, you put clarity there. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any further discussion? Alderwoman from the 11th.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I rise in support of Alderman Oldenburg's comments, in that I do believe this would be weaponized. It was weaponized against me in literature, where I missed, maybe 4 votes. I had COVID twice. One incident I believe I caught directly here in this room from one of my colleagues whose partner was home ill with COVID. And I had no idea until I came down a day or 2 later with COVID. I don't believe anyone here has abused the use of the virtual option. I think that we have bigger issues that we should be entertaining other than this. If it was abused, then that's one issue, but this is not the case. And so again, Alderman of the 2nd Ward, I am in full support that this needs to go away. Thank you.
Any further discussion on the amendment? Alderwoman from the 12th.
Madam President, members of the board, if the alderman from the 3rd would yield.
The alderman from the 3rd yields questioning from the alderwoman from the 12th.
Yes.
Alderwoman, you may proceed.
Thank you. I think that a little confusion came. You were talking about the rules as they originally originated 2 years ago, right?
Correct.
And when you had that meeting about those rules, and was it in a personnel committee or was it in the rules committee, or where did you have that meeting?
If I recall correctly, at the time, there were groups of alderpersons that were brought together to have conversations. It was not done in the caucus setting, as you and I might be familiar with from previous session. But it was my understanding that there was, the body was brought in different clusters to have those conversations 2 years ago.
I wasn't included in that one either. That's what, and so it was in person. It was not on Zoom.
It was in person.
All right.
There might have been an alder or two that came in on the phone, but for my recollection, for the most part, everyone was in person.
Okay, and so something the alderwoman from the 11th said is what made me stop coming. And in fact, you and I were on personnel with the previous president of the board. You and I both served on personnel, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things, and it was in the middle of pandemic, and one of the things that we talked about, we had to do a lot of stuff to come back down here. Air had to be circulated. The ability for people who didn't want to be exposed to be on Zoom. Okay, so, and I asked for, and still don't have, I want the protective plexiglass that was up there around the president, which the former president promised to get and didn't. I don't want people coming to my desk. Okay, I don't want it, especially after she's not, the alderman from the 11th is not the only one that got COVID, probably from down here. It seems like to me the people who are pushing this are more concerned about having their own way than health concerns. That's my main thing, is a health concern. Besides me being healthy, I also have a 90-year-old mother. I'm sorry, she's only 89 and 9 months, but she will be 90 soon. And so I have to go back and forth. I go to Illinois about every 8 days just to check on her, make sure she's doing good, because she still walks and gets around. So there's a health concern that I don't want to take anything to her. I also have seven senior buildings. I don't want to take anything. I think we are dangerously irresponsible down here about COVID, okay? And the fact that the alderwoman got something from somebody who knew that they had been exposed and we didn't follow any kind of procedure, that's way more important than where I vote from, because I can participate from any place. And I don't get any complaints from people. I've been using it a lot because I don't want to get exposed to these germs down here. You're irresponsible down here. I don't want you coming to my desk. You're not testing yourself. I don't want that. And more importantly, that doesn't have anything to do with if I vote, if I read the legislation, which there's no one who can challenge me more than I read the legislation, understand it, ask questions. So the point is, you need to be down here because me or my constituents from another ward that does not include the one that has elected the person the most in the history that's down here, I've been elected more times than everybody. That has not been a point. problem. In fact, from 19, 20, 21, we just did all Zoom because we couldn't do anything else because it was dangerous to come down here and be in person. Okay, so this whole thing of I want you to be here and my constituents are saying it to me, good. Then everybody who wants to be down here, as I understand, should be down here. But everybody who doesn't want to, because it doesn't have to be you're sick. It could be you don't want to be exposed to this irresponsible behavior down here. I think you've had COVID a couple of times. Is that correct?
I believe I've had it 3 times since the pandemic.
Exactly. Okay. So I go home. I still take my temperature and do things. We go in the house. I keep stuff to clean my hands. I'm still doing protective things for my household because I do come in contact with older people, and I don't want to be one of those people that exposes them. People should be getting their vaccinations, but sometimes they haven't. I've had all of mine. I've had an adverse reaction to them, but I've had them. But other people don't. And so it's more than, for me, the thought of what the Alderman from the 1st or the 7th or their constituents want. It's what I can do in the best interest of the 12th Ward, which I have represented in some way or form for 33 years. That has never been a question of if I participate, be it Zoom or anything else. So for the people who say, well, I want to talk to you, talk to the people. And by the way, let me see. If you were on Zoom and I'm on Zoom, can I text you?
Yes, you're able to text me.
And so if I have something I want to share with you, you want to share with me, have we done that before?
I'm sure we have at some point.
Exactly. So there's another way to do it without being up close and in person. And you talked about that you did Zoom when you were on vacation, and you're right. Sometimes it makes it so you can not be there, but that's okay with me. I actually was in Mexico in January, and of the days I was there attending a green conference, I also was online attending meetings because I don't like to miss. My first 10 years I ever served on the Board of Aldermen, I never missed a regular meeting, but we didn't have this concern now. So the people who are in their 20s, 30s, maybe you bounce back a little faster, but as you get older, your body doesn't bounce back faster. You have other concerns. So, and you don't know what you don't know is one of the sayings in our house. And you don't know what it's like to be another age because you never got there. And you also don't know how it affects other people. So me not being here in person, does that in any way affect you, how you do your job?
I would say that in terms of having people in person, you mentioned text messages. Sometimes people don't have their phone next to them, batteries die, my battery is usually around 50% by 10 o'clock in the morning at this point. But we do have occasions where that might be difficult to be able to have those, the 3 C's, communication, collaboration, creativity, that does become a little challenging in virtual environments. So I would say, does it hinder me from doing my job and being able to know? Your attendance does not affect me being able to vote on things, but could it potentially impact one of those 3 C's? Sure.
And so those 3 C's, which are what?
Communication, collaboration, and creativity.
So what if I say, don't come near my desk? And don't come, I just cut them all off just like that, right?
You've done that to me before.
Other people do. Don't come near my desk. So that's not a right down here. That's my right, what access you have to me. Correct. That's what I do not understand, is people not understanding my right. Everybody wants to do what they want to do. And I want to know, what is abuse? What is abuse of the Zoom rule? And like I said, I used to come all the time. When the Alderwoman from the 11th got COVID on several occasions, and part of it was the irresponsibility down here, why would I then want to come and expose the people in my community who are senior or my mother to something like that? Can you explain that to me?
As I mentioned, Alderwoman, the rule as it was crafted was designed to try to limit abuse of the technology. But as I also mentioned, there was no enforcement mechanism to that. The people who hold us accountable are the people who vote us in every form.
But again, I want to try to get to understanding of what is abuse. If I never, so in 19, I don't think I ever came down here, 19 and 20, was, and we couldn't because we didn't even have clean air down here. We had to pay for that. But what is abuse if you are reading the rules, which I have read legislation that passed out of committee 6-1, and then when it got on the floor, it had to be sent back because who read it? Me. Because other people didn't, including the sponsor. I can tell you all other stuff that sometimes I let go and sometimes I try to tell them. So to me, participation is I vote, I appear, I read the legislation, I respond to the legislation if I get the stuff. So the camaraderie that you're talking about, I haven't had that in several years down here because it is something that is racist, sexist, and ageist. And so I don't participate well with that. If you want camaraderie with me, you got to be a fair person who works to make sure everything is fair. If you're not, get away from my desk. We don't need to talk because that's not camaraderie. That's trying to use my black face to say, look, I'm not racist. And when you're being racist, okay? So what is camaraderie to you? You don't get to define what's camaraderie to me. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
And you don't get to have access to me about what's good access to me when I'm trying to protect my mother or the people who I represent, who are mostly seniors. Is that correct?
It's your space, Alderwoman.
Right. So when you start to try to make these rules, this is what I'm telling you about, and I talk about rules that can just creep in. They have no basis in anything about what it does except for what somebody wants, not about your actual job. Because do you believe me being on Zoom has prevented me from reading legislation?
It should not. If you're calling in, I imagine that you have a computer, which means that you have the legislation on a shared drive before you at some point.
And I also print it out oftentimes because I mark it up. And I can bring you my raggedy pieces of paper because I like to mark up. So I do that. And I haven't figured out a way enough to have it marked up and in my hand. And I don't like that because I don't like to waste paper, but I still do mark it up. So it doesn't prevent me from reading the legislation. It doesn't prevent me. Have you ever heard me on Zoom ask questions when I was on Zoom?
Sometimes too many, Alderwoman.
Exactly. So it doesn't prevent me from doing that. So, and again, you say you get a lot of texts. I don't get a lot of texts. But when I do, and we're in session, if it's something about the board, if I can, I'll get back to them pretty fast, okay? In fact, probably better than if I'm running up on them in the meeting. So it's a different style of how you want to do legislation. And style should not be what you're deciding what rules should be. They ought to be the things that's a fair and good for everyone. And trying to decide that I have to come down here 50% of the time, but not enforcing COVID laws to me is foolish and irresponsible. And that whole thing about reporting what you're absent for. So in the 2 hours before, so you were in this. So what happens if you're supposed to have 2 hours before link? And I've had the trash truck behind my garage before when I was coming down here, and I was running late, and something happened, and the trash truck broke. I'm just giving you a thing right behind my garage because I park in the garage. So I couldn't get there. But guess what? My trusty iPad or my home computer or my laptop, I can still be at the meeting. So I can't necessarily give 2 hours if it's an emergency. You might be on your way and something happens. So I thought the whole reason that we were here is to make sure people have the most access to be at the Board of Aldermen, not make certain youngsters feel good because they feel like I want to have camaraderie. Go out and have camaraderie with the people that you're meeting with the rules about that while you leave me out of it. Go ahead and have that camaraderie. But if you want to have a camaraderie with me, and you've been down here long enough that you know this is the truth, I have always tried to be fair. I have taken up for the progressives when the former president. So if you want that kind of camaraderie with me, then you have to be fair to everyone. Do you know me to be any different of that?
On occasion, but by and large, yes, I do agree that you can be very fair.
What you decide if I'm fair or not. Yeah. I don't think it's fair what you've done, okay? But mostly I speak up for even the people that under our rules, that people are persecuting. I'm the person that would get up and speak up for them. Okay, so that camaraderie doesn't go, oh, I can just stab you in the back. Do you feel a camaraderie with people? If you feel like they're stabbing you in the back and leaving you out, and do you want to be around those people?
Alderwoman, I empathize, and I can understand that position.
There you go. So all of those things that you talk about comes with a respect that you have to give people, and I try to give that. And if you don't give that to me, there's no reason for me to talk to you, because what you're really trying to do is going to find out what my objections are, so you can run around to the people that you really talk to and try to say, well, this is why she's going to say, and don't do it. So no, when I used to try cases, I didn't tell the prosecution everything I was going to do. I did have to do discovery, and I do discovery. But your trial strategy, that's not something that you do. Now, I want to say to you, excuse me, if we get this passed, I'm still not coming down here. I'm not going to come down here and expose my people and that I represent and my mom to that. It is more important that I go and I do what I need to do. No, I'm not sick, and I don't want to be sick. And no, I don't want people who knowingly know that they've been exposed to COVID. I will listen to that rule when we come down here and address that. Why do we let somebody come down to this Board of Aldermen who knowingly knew they had been exposed and then came down to this board? It is something wrong with that. Don't you think?
I do. A couple caveats to that, Alderwoman. One, during the pandemic, we were underneath an emergency order that was issued by the mayor at the time and then extended by the next administration. And we do have rules in place for notifying the clerk when someone has become sick and that we're not supposed to be coming down here when we've tested positive for COVID. Of course, if you're symptomatic and you're displaying any type of symptoms, we're encouraging people that they shouldn't, come down to these meetings. And just like this rule, that's not always something that gets enforced.
That's exactly right. So we have a rule about health that's not enforced. So we want to make another rule when people react to say, hey, we're not enforcing the rule we're supposed to. And it wasn't just the mayor. The health director, I think, also came behind and did that. And it was serious. And I guess I've been in office a long time. And even before, I remember when certain presidents didn't take AIDS serious and let a lot of people die, So if we have technology, I feel like this is like telling me I have to use my typewriter and I can't use my iPad. I'm going to break that rule. I sleep with my iPad sometimes. So if you make a rule that says you have to use your typewriter, which, by the way, I have my original typewriter because classic Smith Corona. I have it. But see, somebody older, he's laughing over here. I have it, but I'm not going to use it. So you're telling me you have to come down here 50% of the time because my constituents say they want to see you interact. You're not going to interact with me, so you can just exempt me from that rule because I'm not doing it. And it doesn't make any sense until we get some health enforcement down at this Board of Aldermen where we make sure, are we taking people's temperature? Are we asking people to report if they've been exposed? This person knew they had been exposed and came down here anyway. And I am more concerned that I talked to the alderwoman who I thought was perilously close to not doing so well. And when I'm talking to her, she's saying, I got exposed at the Board of Aldermen. That's much more important to me than trying to get rid of somebody's right who's still trying to participate with Zoom. That makes no sense at all, except for this group of dictators who want to dictate everything people do. I'm not a progressive, but I've always been that person that pushed back for that. I push back for other people, and I push back for myself. And this is a nonsensical rule. I don't care if people come on Zoom all of the time. Are they getting the work done? Do they respond to the people? Are they voting? More to the point, are you reading the legislation? Which I will tell you, a lot of the people do not read the legislation. And you and I both know that. And that's what we're supposed to be doing down here, reading legislation and being able to weigh in on it. And if you're going to pass a rule, it's that you have to be able to do the test of have you read the legislation and do you understand it? And half of the Board of Aldermen wouldn't be here anymore. Thank you.
Any further discussion on the amendment? Any further discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, it's been moved by the Alderman from the 2nd, seconded by the Alderwoman from the 10th, that we adopt Amendment number 3 to Resolution number 1, floor substitute. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Amendment 3 is adopted. Alderman from the 4th.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I have just an oral amendment. I think there's a Scribner's error that I'd just like to address. On Rule 84, it references Rule 42. However, with the updated numbering, it should be addressing Rule number 39.
Do you like to make a motion to adopt that as Amendment number 4?
Yes, I move that we adopt the aforementioned changed as Amendment number 4.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 4th, seconded by the Alderman from the 14th, that we adopt Amendment number 4 to address the Scribner's error. Is there any discussion on that amendment? Alderwoman from the 12th.
I'm sorry. Can you give me a page? And
Yes, if you look at on the floor substitute, it's page number 36, Rule 84.
And what is the error? What is the error?
So in 84, it references Rule number 42 if there's a challenge to the president's decision.
Change. That number is
And it should be 39 since we've renumbered, or else we're going to be referencing to it'll be essentially just nonsense.
I agree. Thank you.
Any further discussion on that amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Amendment 4 is adopted. Alderwoman from the 6th. Sorry.
Thank you, Madam President. I would like to add a friendly amendment to Appendix D on page 48. We're going back to our favorite discussion, back to our topic of media credentials. Application for media credentials under television, I would just like to add a sub-bullet that says radio to make sure that we include radio as publication format.
Would you like to make a motion to add that?
Yes, Madam President, I would like to make a motion to add the word radio as a separate bullet point under television on page 48 of the rules in Appendix D.
It's been moved by the Alderwoman from the 6th, seconded by the Alderwoman from the 7th, that we adopt Amendment number 5 to the rules. Is there any discussion on that amendment? Alderman from the 3rd.
Television killed off the radio stars, and I don't want to send them to an earlier grave than necessary. I'm supportive of the amendment.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, it's been moved by the Alderwoman from the 6th, seconded by the Alderwoman from the 7th, that we adopt Amendment number 5 to the appendices in the rules. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Alderman from the 14th, Alderwoman from the 6th, do you have another amendment?
Yes. Well, I would just I'd like to inquire of the Alderman in the 14th on this section.
Sure. Alderman from the 14th, would you yield to questioning from the Alderwoman from the 6th?
Yes.
Alderwoman, you may proceed.
Thank you, Madam President. I just want to clear up. I know we had a lot of talk about credentials some time ago, but in the changes to this, can you just talk about how the edits to this clarified what credentials are a little bit more?
Yes. Again, this is the media access with the credentials. We're not saying they have to have a credential badge. What we're saying is that all media outlets under the application for media credentials would fill out, and with your amendment, I think was a really good one to make sure that we added radio in there, as we always have some good people from KMOX that shows up on a regular, but to ensure again that we have rules and regulations of the media on the floor. We have rules and regulations for ourselves. It's also important that we make sure we have rules and regulations for the media. Again, I think it is not trying to silence anybody. It's not trying to silence an outlet, an independent person, a typical TV, radio. It is just to ensure that we know exactly, who's here, that they have the ability to use the malt boxes that we have, the designated spots that they will have to be in, and then again, a process for them to be able to get those credentials, which I will say again, I won't state who, but we have talked to some outlets to make sure that we are in line and making sure that we're not impeding on their freedom of speech. And again, they actually have to do this for other governing bodies. So this is just in line with other governing bodies throughout our region as well as throughout the state of Missouri.
And did you happen to know that our clerk at Harvard University?
Say that again, your mic went out.
Did you know that our clerk has a degree in journalism and he graduated magna cum laude from Howard University?
I didn't know that. I knew he went to Howard, but I didn't know he had it in journalism.
And did you also know he was a member of the National Negro Press Association from 1976 to 1979?
He continues to impress me every single day.
And he also worked for this. Did you also know that he worked for the St. Louis Argus?
I feel like he did tell me because once upon a time I used to go to the bookstore. I think it was Progressive Imperial that he took me. I hope I got it right, Mr. Clerk. And he was, during the Ferguson days, mentoring me and, teaching me a lot of just about politics and basic African-American history. And I believe that he did tell me that he used to write for them once upon a time.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Alderwoman from the 11th.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to make an inquiry of the Alderman of the 14th Ward, please.
The Alderman from the 14th yield to questioning from the Alderwoman from the 11th.
Absolutely.
So I'm looking here where it says compliance. Violations can result in...
Could you speak up, Alderwoman? I can't hear you.
So I'm looking at the section that says compliance. Violations can result in a reprimand by the clerk president or a chair and loss of credentials. The president of the Board of Aldermen or a committee chairperson can request to have media members removed. I would like to know what are the guidelines for compliance or a violation of, and specific, what constitutes a violation for media that have somehow breached this agreement.
So I would point to the beginning, and thank you for your question, Alderwoman. Under media access, it states several responsibilities and roles that the media has. Journalists are not permitted to approach alders at their desks or interrupt them during active debate or voting. Alders may voluntarily approach the press with designated areas or speak to journalists on breaks or outside the chambers or hearing room. Credentials medias are allowed in designated spots throughout the Board of Aldermen.
Right.
Do you want me to finish?
Go ahead.
So
please.
I would say we laid out rules and regulations of how and where the media can be and how they are not to interact, which me and the Alderwoman from the 12th talked about when we were at our desks or taking a vote. And if they violate that, it doesn't instantly say that their credentials will be removed. It says they could be reprimanded. And that can just be a conversation saying, hey, you're not allowed to approach alders during a time of vote. You're not allowed to approach them when session is happening, when session is out, and we adjourn. Absolutely.
Okay. So just to be clear, so session is over, someone is leaving, then that would not constitute a violation, correct?
Once we adjourn, that means that there's no Board of Aldermen meeting happening on the floor or in the committee hearing, that yes, media is able to do an interview or come up to your desk as long as you're comfortable with it to have a conversation. But when we're in session and it's during business hours, they have to be respectful and have decorum and making sure that they are not interrupting the process of the legislation process at the Board of Alder.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your question, Alder Lady.
Alderwoman from the 6th.
Thank you, Madam President. I would like to inquire again of the Alderman from the 14th.
The Alderman from the 14th yield to questioning from the Alderwoman from the 6th.
I do.
Alderwoman, you may proceed.
Thank you. I just want to get some clarification because you served in the Missouri legislature. Can you just talk a little bit about, one, from the rules standpoint and the legislative standpoint, that many legislative bodies appear to have a credentialing that the Missouri legislature, to my understanding, has a process and rules for journalists, and many legislative bodies appear to also have rules for journalists when it comes to just what credentials mean and just what that process is for journalists covering their work?
Yeah. So just being on the House side, I didn't get to serve in the Senate, but I also know that there are rules where press are only allowed in certain spots on the Senate floor because you cannot just be on the floor. On the House side, they also have to fill out an application and say who they are, their outlet, a contact number and address. So if the state need to contact them, that they can, to say, that their credentials are approved, or that there was an issue probably with a journal list, which it could be TV or print media. And when they're at the chambers on the House side, they cannot go on the floor. So they're only allowed on the rug. They're not even allowed to really be on the marble. So there are rules and regulations because they can't get too close to state representatives as we're conducting business. Now, again, once that's set, once we ring the bell and we adjourn, they're allowed to go on the floor, and bless her. They're allowed to go on the floor, bless the Alderwoman, not her, the view. So these guidelines are very similar to the highest chamber in the state of Missouri, the House and the Senate.
Thank you. I just want to just go on record. I think it's important that we're having this discussion. In addition to Clerk Kenny, I also have a degree in journalism, and I was a journalist in a past life. And I have, both as a journalist, filed sunshine law requests on behalf of the government. I have redacted sunshine law requests, and I've even been a plaintiff in a lawsuit against the government because they didn't provide the information. So I think it's important, just as a person and as a representative of the government, that we do make sure that we are transparent. But I also just on the record want to say that making sure that folks are credentialed is not an abnormal process at all, that most bodies do have some kind of rules and regulations. It is pretty standard. I think if you talk to a lot of journalists who cover different political bodies, there's a White House press corps. They don't just walk into the White House, right? So I just think that for the sake of this conversation, it's important to note those things. So,
yes. And I appreciate that. Again, I would say on record, probably for the third or fourth time, the point of the media access is not trying to bar any media outlet, any print, TV, radio, citizen journalists. And, I hate that there's a narrative being, put out there that we would do that. I think every single media outlet has asked all of us, from alders to the president, hard questions, to a point where we literally do, I know the president literally do a press briefing, usually after the board, to open up access to the media so that they can ask questions. We, when important legislation is happening, you go over to the Kennedy room or sometimes they're on the floor and have a press briefing, which is always open to any alder to come. If you have a certain bill, we also love for them to come to talk about it so that the media is aware. But I would say, if anything, we have, we've allowed more access for the media to, cover what is going on at the Board of Aldermen. If it's been through our technology where they don't, have to be here. In the past, they could have went on YouTube, so that kind of exists. But it is to just make sure that there is guidelines around access for media. Again, not trying to stop anybody. And, I think legislation, if it isn't perfect, we've seen that with some, and some of my colleagues have brought that up and had to make changes. I appreciate it. If we end up seeing it doesn't work, I feel like this board is very flexible to try to make sure that it is it works for everybody. But again, talking with these outlets, some of them actually gave us some of the feedback to make sure that it is actually in line with other bodies and what they do. So, not trying to ban them, if anything, just put rules and regulations. And again, we regularly hold press briefings to make sure that the media, outside of just taping us, can actually ask direct questions either to the alders about their legislation, or sometimes they don't even care about the legislation. They want to talk about as St. Louis Public Mag say, they got the hot tea or the hot gossip, right? So, but we continue to make sure that access is always open for our media outlets.
And in addition to the meetings being live streamed and committee hearings being live streamed on YouTube and being open to the public, we also have this gallery where you don't have to have credentials or any kind of thing, but you can just walk into City Hall and also observe the proceedings, correct?
Absolutely.
So there is no censorship of what is happening on this board when there is a gallery that is open to the public.
The gallery is open. Once session is out, once the bell rings and we adjourn, this does not say, even if you don't have credentials, that you cannot come and try to talk to an alder, catch them, outside or contact them. But there is multiple ways that media could be able to try to get in contact with alders or just see the process of what's happening, if it's on YouTube or getting a link from the clerk or being in the gallery or filling out the credentials and being on the floor or even attending the press briefings that has, I would say, access so that media could be able to hear what's going on. I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you, Alderman.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Alderwoman from the 13th.
Thank you, Madam President. I was wanting to know if I could ask a question of the Alderman of the 14th.
Would the Alderman from the 14th yield to questioning from the Alderwoman from the 13th?
Absolutely.
Alderwoman, you may proceed.
So, Alderman, I wanted to ask, you were saying when you were in the state that you had, they had rules and regulations in regards to the media. Do you have a copy of those rules?
No, ma'am, I do not have a copy on me.
Can you get us a copy of the rules?
I absolutely can get a copy and email it to you.
Okay, so do you have them at your desk or on hand, or is somewhere we can look them up? Or
if you want to maybe contact, and I'm not being silly, I'll say this, you can contact your state rep to try to get those, but I can also actively try to get that. I'm not going to say that I'm going to get it right now the next 10, 15, 30 minutes, but I can get that and send it to you so that you can have it for your access.
Okay.
Need further discussion? Alderwoman from the 12th.
Madam President, members of the board, if the Alderman from the 14th would yield.
The Alderman from the 14th yield to questioning from the Alderwoman from the 12th.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Alderwoman, you may proceed.
Thank you. So I just heard the Alderman from the 6th talk about that there was any seats that you can have upstairs, that you could be there, and doesn't prevent anybody. Is that correct?
Say that again, ma'am.
I heard the Alderman from the 6th, and you agreed that people could go up to the upstairs and sit there, and there was no restriction or trying to ban the media because they could just go there, right?
That is another way that if folks wanted to record or write or videotape or audio tape, could be from the gallery.
So, why do you think that the media wants to be on the floor?
I can't hear you.
Why do you think the media wants to be on the floor?
I think it's a little better, view and access. Not everyone has a high-def camera, as maybe Channel 5. But also, they have the ability to have the malt box right there. That's why they want to be on the floor, because they're able to connect to the malt box.
So, and can you connect from up there?
If you maybe got a long extension cord, maybe.
Okay, so there is a different access on this floor than it is up there.
It's a privilege. That's why if
those are the colored seats up there. These are the primary seats down here. Is that it?
No, I think you're way out of pocket.
Exactly it.
But
that's what my point is. Is
it's
that you could sit
a
up.
White man up there, our friend Hank, is not colored at all.
And colors is not white, black. It's a lesser seat. Okay, it's what colored folks had to sit when they went to the movies and other places. So when somebody says, "Well, it's perfectly okay, you could just sit up there," but the reason why you don't want to sit up there is because you don't have the access that you would have if you have down here. So, and we want everybody to have equal access. So that is not okay to think that okay, you can just sit up there and then give other people the access. That's not equal access. That's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to make sure everybody has equal access. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, but I think there's a privilege if you are media to make sure that you follow guidelines. If that's the case, do we just allow everyone to sit up there to just be down here. We have to make sure we have rules and regulations that we know, again, who's on the floor. There's a privilege to be on this floor. So as that privilege, they have responsibilities. We have responsibilities by following decorum and certain things. So I totally got lost by saying those seats are the coloreds, and anybody that sit up there have less access. Sometimes people bring their classroom and students that just want to listen, and I don't think that they are less than because they have a gallery
But
in the house.
You're too young to even understand, so I'm sorry that I made that reference. That's not what I meant at all. I was referring directly to the press, saying that we were going to make a different class. We're going to say they can sit up there and they would still have access. No, they would not have the same access as the press that's down here. That is my point. So I'm sorry that you got lost in the analogy. So I'll bring it back from the weeds and say it is not the same. And you gave the correct answer. The reason why people want to be down here is because you have a different angle and access even to the altar people when they're finished things. And when you're up there, by the time you come down stairs or whatever, the people may be gone. So it is a different access and a different angle and a better angle. When you're trying to do some coverage up there, you get the backs of people's heads maybe sometimes, and you don't get access to the people. So that's it. So my point is it's not the same to sit up there, and it is a suppression. If I have owned my own farm and then you take it from me and then you make me a sharecropper, that's a different thing. That's what happened to my ancestors. Owned their own farm, then they were made a sharecropper, and then they said, this is how much you owe. So when the press have had access, which they have had all the years I've been down here, and all of a sudden it becomes this thing of, well, we got to have credentials, and we need this, and we need that. And it comes after there was some bad press against the president, then that's what they take it as. And that's what this person takes it as. And then when you cannot tell, when you start to say it's the same if you sit up there, no, it's not the same when you can banish people, you can tell them, no, you can't. And I agree that if they do transgress, because if they're not sitting here and come over to your desk and mine, there should be something from the president that says, point of order, would the press please go back to their designated spots. But to try to say that it's the same if you sit upstairs, it is not. So I don't want that to be made a point that does not go unchallenged, and to be able to say, well, you got free media, you can be up there. All media wants the same access, and if they don't have it, that is the problem, and that's my problem I'm going to have, is when media does not have the same access. If we're going to have rules, they need to be rules rooted in something that is really, and I don't say you have to make rules when something dangerous happens, because I just read about Bob McCullough's son, who was a police officer getting probation, and he shot guns at a kid's event. And so I wish we would have had more proactive rules. So I'm not saying you don't have proactive rules. I'm just asking the question of why we have these rules now and how much will it curtail the access. That's my concern, is that the access not be curtailed, and that people who are with large media or people who are unaffiliated or freelance, there are a lot of media, especially black media, that is freelance. They sell their pictures, their stories, they come out down and cover, and I don't want to hear that all of a sudden they don't have access to things because they don't have the credentials. And a lot of times we don't even let people know. So besides everything else, I think if you're going to do this, you need to put this out in the public, because I'm going to vote against the rules anyway. But this is one of the reasons, and there's some others that's in here. If you're going to do that, then you need to make sure that not only the big media knows, but that people like Maurice Meredith, who is a freelance, other people such as him that are not connected with anything but do things all the time, make sure we don't make rules with, I think, intended consequences. See, I don't think they're unintended. I think that is the intended consequence of a lot of things that go on down here. And when you get challenged and you say, oh, we didn't let 2 or 3 people know, that's an intended consequence. And after a while, you cannot say, oh, that was accidentally, that was purposeful. So if we're going to do this, you need to let the media know by large outlets, but anybody you know that's unaffiliated also needs to have some kind of notice, that the board is changing their rules about media access. And I know in speaking to Mr. Elliott Davis about it, he said, well, I'll just make up my own credentials. And then now I find out, no, he can't do that, that you have to apply through the clerk. And the clerk has to decide if it's an appropriate thing with your application. And I still think that that is a large responsibility to be put on the clerk and should not be. And if you all had this as a meeting in personnel, it's one of the reasons I suggest that you need to expand your personnel committee, because you have all the people that think like you in there telling yourself that that's a good idea. And I want to give shout out to the former president, because I gave him the blues, but he always had me on personnel because he knew I always came with ideas, and it was better to hear it and find out that it was something that wasn't a good idea than to hear it on the floor that you're doing now. That's what happened when you try to lock everybody out and just have your buddies and friends be part of decision making.
Any further discussion? Alderwoman from the 6th.
Thank you. Madam President, may I inquire of the Alderman for the 14th?
The Alderman from the 14th yield to questioning from the Alderwoman from the 6th.
I do.
Alderwoman, you may proceed.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm going to try and keep this brief. I understand. I'm going to just read the definition for citizen journalists must authenticate their status by confirming that they are running some form of nonpartisan media that regularly publishes or covers civic or political matters related to the City of St. Louis or the Board of Aldermen. That's the correct definition. Yes?
Yes, that is the correct definition.
So just for everybody's sake, as I understand this, would Elliott Davis qualify as a citizen journalist under our definition?
He absolutely will. He has been on this floor plenty of times. He has been at the press conference that we hold outside of the Board of Aldermen to talk about legislation several times.
Right, but just specifically for the rules for this.
If we are talking about that one individual, yes, Mr. Elliott Davis will absolutely qualify to be on the Board of Aldermen floors with
and
that
just
definition.
So I understand, based on this application for media credentials, there is no tiered system.
Not at all.
No tiered definition.
No hierarchy or anything like that.
There's not a certain section for media on the floor versus media in the gallery, correct?
Correct. We're not saying TV is over citizen journalists. We're not saying radio is less than citizen journalists. It is actually an all equal process that everyone be able to fill out if you are TV, radio, print, or citizen journalist.
So all journalists who have credentials, and credentials are based simply on if they meet all these standards which are laid out, would have access to the floor of the Board of Aldermen.
Yes, and I think the name that you mentioned, we know, has years and years of civic engagement. He is very well known.
Right, but just help me out and just stick to the definition.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman from the 4th.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I have two just kind of cleanup amendments since we have pushed the meeting from last Tuesday to today, just based on timing for committee selections. On page 16, Rule 25, subsection 2, it says 1 week. I would propose that we change that to 48 hours.
Do you want to make a motion?
Yes. What amendment are we on right now?
This would be amendment number 6.
So I move that we adopt amendment number 6, which would be to change 1 week to 48 hours on page 16.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 4th, seconded by the Alderwoman from the 1st, that we adopt amendment number 6 to resolution number 1, floor substitute. Is there any discussion on the amendment? Alderwoman from the 12th.
Yes, it's on page 16. What line?
So it's in Rule 25, subsection 2. It's towards the bottom of that second, the subsection 2 paragraph. The officers of the board shall select the chairs of standing committees within 1 week. That 1 week would, under the proposed amendment, would change from 1 week to 48 hours.
And so, you do know do we still have a requirement that rules be put in writing if a member requests, or have we changed that and threw that out?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Do we still have a requirement that amendments be put in writing, or is that something that has been thrown out?
I don't believe that an amendment needs to be in writing.
If some member requests, it has always been, unless everybody agrees to a friendly amendment, it has always been that it has to be in writing. Okay.
Okay. And Ed, would you like it in writing? Is that what
No, I just want to know if we changed that or not.
I would defer to the president on that. I don't believe there's been any change, but I can't speak to that. I'm not sure.
Thank you.
Off the top of my head.
So you're going to, shall select the chairs within 48 hours, you said?
Yes, the change from 1 week to 48 hours.
And what is the hurry?
Just so that we don't lose a week. This Friday will be the first week that board bills are read, so they'll be first read and assigned to committees. And ideally, we'd have committees to assign them to.
And so before it was brought up, because I'm going to bring up that everything we're doing is in violation of our rules. Because first thing I'm going to tell you is that our rules were mandatory that said we shall adopt rules Tuesday, not May. And then we made up this conglomeration of, we can go to Robert Rules of Order. No, we can't. That's why I suggested we adopt one rule, which we have done before, which says we give ourselves the grace to then pass the rule that says we don't have to have 8, we just have to have 7, because we're not operating on any such rules except for gentlemen, quote, gentlewomen agreement, because we don't have any, because we didn't follow them, okay? And it's very clear in our rules. And the only time that we've had to do that, we did adopt some rules that gave us the grace to do it. Only this time that we start to say the Robert's Rules of Order prevailed. They do not. When a rule is mandatory and says shall, that is mandatory, right?
Yeah, shall means shall. Yes, ma'am.
That's right. Okay, so anyway, just moving on. So one of the things that were brought up was that we had to hurry up and do this because we had to get the committee set up because we had to do the budget. Do you know when the budget is due over at the Board of Aldermen?
I don't have the date on the right with me, but we do have a substantial amount of time to debate the budget and send it over.
So it's not the budget. We just want to get our rules set in place.
Yes.
And you just want to hurry up and violate my right to have been a part of any of this previous discussion, and then I should be happy because colored girls who've considered suicide when the rainbow ain't enough, that would be the 11th, 12th, and 13th colored girls were not included in this, and somehow it was made all right by then. Now we give it a few more days, and we try to admit that this is wrong and racist and sexist and ageist. Would you like to have been omitted out of a conversation?
Alderwoman, I think it's deeply unfortunate that there wasn't an invite sent to everyone. I think that's the appropriate way to handle it.
Deeply unfortunate for 2 times now. It was done before in 23 and now in 25. You all are making a very good record for what I need. Thank you very much. I don't need to go into this because this all is a bunch of bull, and it is set up so there's a conflict of interest. And I love that the alderman from the 14th talked about what else is in legislative rules, because have I got one for him?
That
and
we
so
are
I
on
wanna
amendment
know
number
that
6. So we are discussing the change from 1 week to 48 hours for committee assignments.
And I want to know, and I'm still talking about what is the reason except for you just want to, because I wanted to be invited to the meetings for the last 4 years. So what is the rule? What is the reason for that? So I'm now the chair, has president sent somebody down to tell you what to say, so let me hear what they had to say. In my day, earlier, I want you to know that when the president wanted to debate, and Lewis didn't, I'm sorry, the former president didn't do it, but the correct way, just to give you something I know, is for the chair to come down, let the vice president take the podium, and then they stand for debate and question, not send their people around, okay? So that is the correct way, and that is why you have people who actually know the rules. So go ahead and tell me.
So what Mr. Nelson just came and told me was just the date that ENA was going to pass the budget. That's the only thing that he had,
and what is
he had told me. So that'll be next week, and it'll be sent to committee.
by what date? Do you know that we have a rule about what date it has to be at the Board of Aldermen?
And I think we're debating these rules right now.
No, we actually have an actual charter rule, which overrides that.
Certainly.
But, okay, that's okay. I'm just giving you guys a hard time because to me, we have been disenfranchised. So I'm going to support your rule because it is a good one. I understand what's not good is what it's attached to. But I'm going to keep making the record that if you leave me out, I'm going to be hell to deal with. If you think that I'm going to go along okay, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong. And people see this. I could not go any place today, this week, without people approaching me saying, saw that. What is going on at the... I'm getting emails from your ward saying, way to go, Alderwoman Tyus. You're slowing that down. We can't believe they're doing that. You guys cannot run on being transparent and then at the same time not be. So I'm going to support it because I don't have a problem with it, but I don't support what it's attached to, that the president and the members of the whatever leadership they pick should interview me. I'm never going to be interviewed. Again, that goes back to racism when black people lost all their rights and lost their farms, and then they made them sharecropper, and then they had to come and say, Massa, can you tell me how much I owe? I'm never going to be that person, especially with the most education, the most knowledge, and the most seniority. That is ridiculous, and it is racist.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, it's been moved by the Alderman from the 4th, seconded by the Alderwoman from the 1st, that we adopt amendment number 6 to resolution number 1, floor substitute. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Alderman from the 4th.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. In a very similar vein, I would like to move to adopt amendment number 7, which will be on page 17, Rule 26, changing 10 days to 48 hours.
Is there a second? Second. It's been moved by the Alderman from the 4th, seconded by the Alderman from the 14th, that we adopt amendment number 7 to resolution number 1, floor substitute. Is there any discussion on the amendment? Alderwoman from the 12th.
And I heard page 17, and I know these rules are changing now. So which rule
Yes,
is
ma'am. It's rule number 26 in the floor
second.
substitute.
So it's not the original Rule 26, it's the second Rule 26 since we moved all the numbers.
Yes,
down.
ma'am.
Okay, and so what are you changing?
The 10 days to 48 hours, just for the same, essentially the same discussion as we just had.
And so if we had passed our rule on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, we're shortening the time. Yeah, we are. We're shortening the time.
We are shortening the time, but the president could do it any time within that
But
10 days.
why are we shortening? So if we, I understand what you're saying, that we don't have as much time because we didn't pass the rules, because we violated our own rules, okay? And because mandatory is shall, and that old Robert's Rules of stuff was not. But that still gave within 10 days. So 10 days if we had passed, and not business days, because we didn't say business days. So 10 days from Tuesday, 7 would have been, on this Tuesday would have been 7 days. So Friday. So is that so? So it's just shortening in 1 day. Okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
Any further discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Alderman from the 14th, you are recognized on resolution number 1, floor substitute as amended.
With that, Madam President, close.
No.
Wait, I didn't hear what you said. I can listen to the president. Can you?
Further discussion? Alderwoman from the 12th.
I'm sorry, Madam President, did you recognize him to close? Because I didn't hear that.
I did, but if you are still wanting to speak on it, we can recognize you.
Okay, thank you very much. I rise in opposition of this set of rules. I opposed it 2 years ago. I think it is the most dictatorial, ridiculous thing I have ever seen. It is basically very racist and condescending to the black people in North St. Louis. I cannot stand what I see happening down here. You work very hard with the rules, and this is something that has happened. I want to talk about this. This is something that has happened in black politics for years, and people can try to coach it and hide it, but it is what it is, and we need to know about it. For years, we didn't have any black elected officials in the United States because we were slaves. And then when slavery was finally gone, we actually elected people to be senators in the Reconstruction time. And the first person is Hiram Rhodes Revels in 1870, followed by several other people. They were Republicans. And so the Democratic members of the United States Senate opposed them being seated, and little by little, they changed the rules. Oh, we're not being racist. They changed them. We got rid of them so that people of color could not serve on the Senate. So in the 1800s, we lost that right, and we got a Voting Rights Act in 1965, and then in 1967, Edward Brooks of Massachusetts became the first African American to be elected by popular vote of ratification, after ratification of the 17th Amendment. He was, of course, still a Republican, and we did not get a Democratic senator between 1993 and 2010. We finally got Carol Moseley Braun. And the reason this is because when black people tend to get in spaces, and women too sometimes, then people change the rules and say, this is nothing racist. It actually is. When you have something by right and people think that you have to then go with hat in hand and ask Massa, is this okay? Can I do this? That's racist. And there always are black people who go along with this stuff, who say, yeah, this is what we need. That's what happened with the end of slavery. When slavery was ended, there were black people who say, Massa, what we gonna do? Are we gonna go along with this? We can't do without slavery. It's very important when I talk about reading everything, because when you read, then you get to find out what's in these rules. For 30-something years, I've read the stuff that's going on, and I've never seen as much racism as it concerns black women as I've seen in these last 2 years of this presidency. And that whole thing of people who just got here think that they have a right to be a chair, and they're making the demands, and they don't even know how to do motions. They don't know what they're doing. It's not anything based on deservedness. It says that the young people have taken over, and we are disrespectful of everything. When you go to the floor of the Senate and the floor of the U.S. Senate and the House, or you come to the state, they have a majority and a minority. But we fixed that with Proposition D, which we decided we were all nonpartisan. It's funny because we're not nonpartisan. And the former mayor, I tried to tell her that was not something that was in her best interest. She did not listen. She's the former mayor. This was all things that are used to go against black people who could have things by right. Right now we have one Hispanic member, one Asian American member, and they are overrepresented at the Board of Aldermen in relationship to population. But black people in North St. Louis are underrepresented. Our wards are not drawn correctly. They're not compact, contiguous. They're a mess. They have no business being wards like that. And this kind of rules that we're doing, where you think that you can make people come and ask for permission for something that they've earned, will never be okay with me. And this whole thing about continuing seniority, and people say, well, Sharon, you just want your seniority. I want my seniority because it's something that my people earned. And they could not beat the people, so they cheated them. And we have this little pesky thing called the United States Constitution, and it has an equal protection clause in it. And you can't make laws and rules that don't equally protect everybody. And this board thinks that they can, because we have a lot of people that don't know that the Constitution trumps the Board of Aldermen. They think that they got it and gone. You don't. And I've heard the word Trumpism and everything referred to this board this weekend. That's what I heard. Like, my God, this is like Trump down there. No, this is worse than Trump, because Trump says who he is, and a lot of people down here pretend like that it's something different, and it's exactly that. It is trying to diminish and demise and do anything you can against black females, but you keep losing. You do not win when you're running people against us. So the people in the 11th, 12th, and 13th ward has said that is not okay. So then you come down here and you put these rules together and you say, we're going to diminish and you have the same rights. No, you do not. See, when you have things that you have earned, that nobody can challenge you, then you have something. When you set up a group of people that you pick the leaders and you pick the Negroes that are a part of the leadership, that is not leadership. I said it 2 years ago and I'll say it again. You cannot pick leadership in the black community because they're not. They're your leadership, but they're not black people's leadership, and they do not lead the black community. And we had more fairness with the old South than we have down here now because they didn't try. I can remember people saying to me, well, you guys pick that over in North St. Louis and we'll pick this in South St. Louis. They understood. And I know you understand it because I would love to see Donald Trump come to a regressive, progressive meeting and say, I'm going to pick your leaders. No way would that happen, okay? The same things with Asians or Hispanics or whatever. But some things you think because you got a black face that you have picked black leadership. You have not. I'm not going to go along with it. It is not anything I want to have anything to do with. And the people who I thought maybe accidentally did at this time, they're not accidentally doing it. They're doing it on purpose. And that's what I like to see, people, what they're doing on purpose. Because then when I react, I want you to know that it is not an accident. You're arrogant. You're racist. You're sexist. You're ageist. And you think you can get away with it. You think you've gotten away with it for 2 years, but you haven't really been successful at it. People see that. And this is so funny to me. And I tell people this. The same people who want Asians' rights, Hispanic rights, or gay rights, they don't want black women rights. They don't want us to have the right that we have ours. And seniority was a way that you could have people who had done the most work. Their people had elected them more and more. That didn't mean that they agreed with you, but you had somebody who knew how to handle the board, committees, do the work, know the rules, not go along with craziness that the president tries to do, implement, to think that they're punishing people. So the people who have brought up the former president of the Board of Aldermen, Lewis Reed, let me say to you so everybody can hear it, we miss you, Lewis Reed, because this person who I stood on the floor and defended is somebody, if I could go back in time, our current president, I would have been the 20th vote to put her off the Board of Aldermen for the things that she's done, to censor her. And there were lots of people that wanted to, and I showed up in committee and defended her. I will never, ever do it again. When somebody lets you see who they are, and all of you all who fallen behind her because you want to be the chair of public safety, or you want to be the chair of your committee and think that's all right, there's something wrong with you too. So I am not voting for this. I want a roll call. I want to be on record saying this is racist, ageist, and sexist. And it really is against North St. Louis because we have some of the most senior people, but you have people, first-term people, running committees last time, which was also against our rules. Committees of the whole do not go on. That was not our rule, but it went on. I waited for somebody to say, hey, this is not right. Committees of the wholes were supposed to be reconvened. It was supposed to be something about the whole board of aldermen, then did a committee of the whole. The president was supposed to step aside and then appoint a committee, and it was not supposed to be continuous. But when you have a lot of people who don't know the rules and just want to be part of something, and they don't care about how much was right, something is going to blow up, and then everybody will be saying, I didn't know this. Yes, they do. When we had the unfortunate incident down here of people being saying that they were drinking and stepping and running off of the board, people start texting me saying, "Oh, Sharon, what do we do?" I got off the phone. I knew exactly what to do. I didn't respond because if you don't think the rules apply except for when you're mad, they're not good rules. Anything you have to do, all anybody had to do was go up to that podium and continue because the president didn't do the rules correctly. She violated the rules yet again because once you do a motion she didn't do it wasn't a motion to adjourn. She did a motion to a certain time, and then she left, and she had a second. If you had walked up to that podium and said, "There's been a motion on the floor. There's no officers here," anybody could have had that, carried that and said, "Do we want to vote on that? Do we want to sustain the motion? Do we want to do a motion to adjourn?" There were a lot of things, but everybody's going, "What?" Because we got all these new people that don't know anything. We didn't have that kind of stuff when we had senior alder people who would push back. When we had senior alder people in charge of committees who didn't do what the president wants so they could have a committee. That's blackmail. That's it's ridiculous. It's shameful. It's the kind of things that we talk about other democracies, other countries don't have because we have this great democracy. We don't. We do not have a democracy down at this Board of Aldermen. We have something that is shameful. And when you all want for people to think how great this is, how you treat people fairly, how you have meetings and secret meetings and don't invite other people, that's all shameful. And you didn't do it one time, you did it twice. That is not a democracy. It's a word. It's called dictatorship. And then when you get mad, don't ever call my phone again because you're mad because you're going along with this dictatorship. Because whatever happens to you, you deserve it. And I hope that you're never in the position when they do that to you. Because I've stood on this floor and stood up for Asian Americans, Hispanics, and both of the gay men who, by the way, voted for that stuff 2 years ago, openly gay. I don't get a chance to be openly black. From the day I've been born, I've been openly black, and I'm happy to be openly black. And for all of you people who go along with this, shame on you. And I want a roll call so I can make sure that I vote on this racist piece of legislation.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, Alderman from the 14th, you're recognized to close.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I appreciate my colleagues for taking this trip down the rules lane with me and discussing and opening up questions on some of the rule changes. I'll just say just the public is aware, a lot of the changes that are made are the same rules that we've been abiding by for the last 2 sessions now. Some of them that has changed is just more cleanup language than anything. The stand at ease is new, as well as the media access. And if I'm not mistaken, if you go off the actual vote last session when we voted on the rules the second time, everyone voted for them, and I will give the credit to the Alderwoman, I'll give the credit to the Alderwoman of the 12th that she was the only one, but, I was going to hesitate to go in low because I just thought regardless if we disagree, we don't have to name call, but I think the roll call is going to show that, my mom always say the bigger they are, the harder they fall. And with that, Madam Clerk, I close and look for a resounding amount of support on this rule, on the rule changes. Thank you.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 14th, seconded by the Alderman from the 7th, that we adopt resolution number 1, floor substitute as amended. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Schweitzer. Aye. Alderman Oldenburg.
No.
Alderman Cone.
Aye.
Alderman Narayan. Aye. Alderman Devoti. Alderwoman Velazquez. Alderwoman Sanye. Alderman Browning. Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. Alderwoman Keys. Alderwoman Tyus. Alderwoman Boyd. Alderman Aldridge. President Green.
Aye.
10 aye votes and 4 no votes.
By your vote, you sustain the motion from the Alderman from the 14th to adopt Resolution 1, floor substitute, as amended.
That's to extend the first reading of resolutions and reference to committee.
Second reading resolutions, committee reports, and adoptions.
We have none.
Please dispense with line item 21. Courtesy resolutions, we already did. Alderman, miscellaneous and unfinished business.
Nomination and election of officers.
Alderman from the 9th, you are recognized on the suspension of the rule.
Thank you. I move that we suspend the rules in order to nominate and elect officers. I'll repeat that. I move that we suspend the rules in order to nominate and elect officers of the board.
Second.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 9th, seconded by the Alderman from the 3rd, that we suspend the rules for the purposes of nominating and electing officers for the Board of Aldermen. This is a non-debatable motion. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Schweitzer. Aye. Alderman Oldenburg.
Pass.
Alderman Cone.
Aye.
Alderman Narayan.
Aye.
Alderman Devoti. Alderwoman Velazquez. Alderwoman Sanye. Alderman Browning. Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. Alderwoman Keys. Alderwoman Tyus. Alderwoman Boyd. Alderman Aldridge.
Aye.
President Green.
Aye.
Alderman Oldenburg. 12 aye votes and 2 no votes.
By your vote, you sustain the motion from the Alderman from the 9th. Now, in accordance with Rule 1 of the Board of Aldermen, nominations and elections for officers are now open. We will begin with nominations for Vice President, followed by Floor Leader, and conclude with nominations for Assistant Floor Leader. So with that, I will now take nominations for Vice President of the Board. Alderwoman from the 1st.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I nominate Alderman from the 3rd for Vice President.
It's been moved by the Alderwoman from the 1st, seconded by the Alderman from the 9th, that we elect Alderman from the 3rd as our Vice President. Are there any other nominations? Alderwoman from the 12th.
I can have time to speak. I want to wait for the.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you if you are
I'm
not
sorry.
okay.
I'm just waiting for the time when you have conversation. I want to see who else is going to be nominated.
Is there any further nominations? Any further nominations? Seeing none, I will close nominations for Vice President.
Point of order. Are we going to do all at the same time, or are we going to address them separately?
We'll address them separately.
So, thank you. I want to address when there's appropriate time.
You would like to speak to the vice presidential nomination?
Correct.
Okay, you may proceed.
Thank you very much. There has been much to do in this city of St. Louis because I got calls election night about all-white board of VNA. And now we're making the vice president also white from South St. Louis. And I want to say the remarks you made, Madam President, are so off the wall, inappropriate. I haven't been able to say anything because of how many people have said anything. But I want to say to you all, you're sending this message out here to a city that's 50% black, that black people don't exist, except for the ones you choose. And that is not okay. So having all white ENA and then the vice president white is just a continuation of that. I know it's the rule that you all set up, and it's the agreement that you made, but it is a mistake. And I'm going to vote no, even though there's nobody else. My answer is still no.
Any further discussion on the nominations for vice president? Seeing none, it's been moved by the alderwoman from the 1st, seconded by the alderman from the 9th, that we elect the alderman from the 3rd as the vice president of the board. All those in favor signify by, there's been a request for roll call. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Schweitzer. Alderman Oldenburg.
Present.
Alderman Cone.
Aye.
Alderman Narayan.
Aye.
Alderman Devoti. Alderwoman Velazquez. Alderwoman Sanye. Alderman Browning. Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. Alderwoman Keys. Alderwoman Tyus.
No.
Alderwoman Boyd. Alderman Aldridge. President Green.
Aye.
Alderwoman Keys. Alderwoman Boyd. 10 aye votes, 2 no votes, and 1 voted present.
By your vote, you sustain the motion from the alderwoman from the 1st. Congratulations, alderman from the 3rd, or sorry, depending upon the day. With that, we will now open up nominations for floor leader. Alderwoman from, both of you got up at the same time. I think alderwoman from the 6th was technically up first, so I will recognize her.
Thank you, Madam President. I would like to make a motion to nominate Alderwoman from the 10th for the position of floor leader.
Second.
It's been nominated by the alderwoman from the 6th, seconded by the alderman from the 14th, that we nominate the alderwoman from the 10th for floor leader. Are there any other nominations? No. Okay. Are there any other nominations? Seeing none, I will close nominations. There's been a request for roll call. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Schweitzer. Alderman Oldenburg. Alderman Cone.
Aye.
Alderman Narayan. Alderman Devoti. Alderwoman Velazquez. Alderwoman Sanye. Alderman Browning. Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. Alderwoman Keys. Alderwoman Tyus.
No.
Alderwoman Boyd. Alderman Aldridge.
Aye.
President Green.
Aye.
Alderwoman Boyd. Twelve aye votes, 1 no vote, and 1 voted present.
By your vote, you sustain the motion from the alderwoman from the 6th. Congratulations, alderwoman from the 10th. With that, I will open up nominations for assistant floor leader. Alderman from the 4th.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I move that we nominate the alderman from the 14th for assistant floor leader.
It's been moved by the alderman from the 4th, seconded by the alderwoman from the 7th, that we elect the alderman from the 14th as our assistant floor leader. Are there any other nominations? Alderwoman from the 11th.
I nominate the alderman from the 10th Ward, Michael Browning.
Ninth.
I'm sorry, make that the 9th Ward.
The 9th Ward. So it has also been moved by the alderwoman from the 11th and seconded by the aldermen from the 2nd that we elect the alderman from the 9th as assistant floor leader. Alderman from the 9th.
Thank you. I'd like to withdraw my name from the nomination.
Madam Clerk, please make note of that if the alderwoman from the 11th could withdraw her motion.
Thank you. I will withdraw my motion, and I would put forth that we ask the alderman of the 2nd Ward, Oldenburg to take the mantle.
It's been moved by the Alderwoman from the 11th, seconded by the Alderwoman from the 12th, that the Alderman from the 2nd be elected as assistant floor leader. Is there any discussion? Alderman from the 2nd.
This on? There we go. I appreciate and accept this nomination for a couple of reasons. One, we should change up the leadership. That just running back the same leadership that we had from last time, it's probably not a great idea, right? We had a void in leadership, one might argue, the last couple days of session down here. We called an illegal recess. President stormed out of the room. Nobody picked up the gavel. That's not leadership. Let's mix it up. Let's have a check to some power. I'm happy and humbly accept the nomination. Look forward to the votes.
So with that, we have nominations for both the Alderman from the 14th and the Alderman for the 2nd for assistant floor leader. Are there any other nominations? Okay. Seeing none, what we will do now in terms of a vote, since we do have two folks, we will first take we will first do a roll call vote on the Alderman for the 14th, and then we will do a roll call vote on the Alderman for the 2nd. Alderwoman from the 12th.
Point of order, are we going to have discussion about the nomination?
We will have discussion, just outlining the process.
Okay, thank you.
So Alderwoman from the 12th, are you wanting to speak on the nominations?
I think the Alderman from the 3rd had a point of order also, so I wanted to get out the way till he... Yes, I do.
Yielding to you.
Yes, thank you. I want to rise in support of the Alderman from the 2nd. I'm so glad to see you accept that nomination. I've served with you since you come down here. I appreciate your leadership. I appreciate that when we've worked together, whether we've agreed or not, we've never fallen out. It's never been the thing that I looked for from you to agree with me. In fact, you said once on the floor, we hardly ever agree, but we probably agree more than what you like to think. But I do like that you're taking a leadership role, that you're speaking out against things that are wrong. That's what I look for in leaders. Everybody that follows in behind people and just does anything and stabs people in the back and is untruthful and then want to have a relationship with me, I don't want to have one. I'll take somebody who disagrees with me 100% and tells me that you disagree, and we have honest communication, and that's what I've had with you. We worked on a very important bill a few years ago when we had a president that actually believed in having democracy, and you and I worked very well. You kept your word. I appreciate it. I think you would bring something amazing to this stacked board of leadership. And so, again, thank you for accepting the nomination, and I think you would make a great leader among the Board of Aldermen.
Any further discussion? Alderwoman from the 7th.
Madam President, members of the board, I just wanted to I'm wondering now if we should have a rule of leadership, if this should be their only full-time job, if you're going to be in a leadership position. I'm just curious about that. I would say I've not had any disagreements with the Alderman. I've had disagreements with the Alderman from the 2nd, but for me, someone that's going to be in leadership role, I want to know that you're going to show up and to be present. And I do find that the Alderman of the 14th is extremely active. He's extremely present, extremely involved, and extremely responsive. And I just wanted to make sure that I brought that forth as a concern as we're discussing rules and how this goes. I'm absolutely in support of the Alderman from the 14th as assistant floor leader, and I just think it should be a question for all of us. For me, I would want someone who's going to be in leadership of a body I'm on. I want this to be your sole focus. I think other things are really up to your community, but for this, I think that's important. And I've appreciated the Alderman from the 14th's leadership role. I appreciate everyone who served last session, which is why I voted again for all of those individuals, because I've seen those personnel committees and some of those long conversations and important discussions that have been happening. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Alderwoman from the 11th.
Thank you. So as I nominated Alderman Oldenburg for this position, I find him to be highly competent, a man with a mind of his own, and I think that he would be the very best choice for this role. If we're going to talk about attendance, we have some alders who are late to every meeting. So do we want to paint them with the same brush? We all have things that occur that sometimes may prevent us from being here, as we have discussed earlier. So I think that this is a good change for our board. You know, I do want to have everybody here to really think about how we do this thing down here. You know, we keep putting the same people in the same positions doing the same things. Here is an opportunity to do something different. And I hope that your allegiance is to the people of this city of St. Louis and your respective wards, as I've said many times before. They are watching to see who you really serve. Let's show them what we're doing.
Alderwoman from the 12th.
Madam President, members of the board, I think what the Alderwoman from the 7th said was out of line regarding the Alderman from the 2nd. I've worked with him much longer than she has. She just got here. I don't give people praise for no reason. He is a hard worker. He stands up for his community. He comes to work probably more than what the Alderwoman from the 7th does, actually. And so I'm not doing this just because, oh, I want to get back at somebody. I actually think he would be a much better person. I do value honesty in conversation. And I also want to see diversity, not some chosen diversity of the woke people. We don't even have a minority. All the time I was down here, Fred Hyder of the 12th Ward was the the Republican person. And he was the head of the minority division of the caucus because, and his picture is up there, because we understood that everybody doesn't think the same. We have a board of aldermen now that's so woke, they only want one way of thinking. And if you don't think that way, you're not part of anything that goes on. And it's perfectly okay to leave people out and to assassinate characters when you need to be looking at yourself. The Alderman from the 2nd is a perfectly good nomination. And if we need to talk about being here on time and full time, and also what are the conflicts of interest that we have, we better be careful. I keep telling you that because there are a lot of conflicts of interest that we have not addressed. I am not supporting this because you agree with me 100% of the time or 50% or whatever that test is to be a progressive. Because James Page was down here and he voted with them, say, 80%, and that wasn't enough. And Tina Peel probably voted 95%, and that wasn't enough. And that they don't understand that the diversity needs to be not in color or sex, but in also maybe ideology, is because they're immature and don't understand. So I want you to know, Alderman from the 2nd, supporting you because I just want to stick it to somebody. I really wish I had thought of it, because it's a better nomination. And thank you again for running.
Any further discussion, Alderman from the 14th?
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. Well, first and foremost, I want to thank my colleague from the 4th Ward for nominating me for this position. I remember 2 years ago you nominated me for this position. And to my colleagues on the Board of Aldermen, it has been an honor to serve in this role as assistant floor leader on the personnel committee. I've been proud of the work that we've done on the personnel committee. A lot of the things, as far as the TVs and the way going hybrid, was decisions that we made when it came to personnel. A lot of the raises that I think our hardworking women and men at the board, our staff that sits in front of us, the raises that personnel committee approved this session was well needed and overdue. Making sure that we got rid of the asbestos in some of the offices was something that I was proud to be part of. Making sure that new desks and the desks for our LA suites was approved was something that I was glad to be on. Recently, the Personnel Committee also approved a process where we could start evaluating our staff so we can make sure that if they need certain help, need certain support, and have an evaluation system to make sure that we can keep them up on par's pay. It was something that, again, we've done at Personnel. I believe the Alderman from the 2nd Ward would be a great assistant floor leader. However, I know my commitment. I know what I want to do for this board. I think it is good to have some diversity. I know we just mentioned of saying we didn't want like an all-white and then we was nominating a white man, but now we're getting, we would, if Mr. Alderman from the 2nd would win, we would have less people of color currently that we have on leadership. Right now, it's a good balance with having 2 people of color as well as 2 people who are not of color, 2 people who live south and 2 live north. If we were to change it, it would be 3 south and then just 1 north. So I think the representation is important. I'm glad we're having a conversation. It's been an honor to serve. I look forward to serving for another 2 years to do the work on this personnel or in leadership to do the work necessary to move this board forward. Thank you.
Need further discussion? Alderwoman from the 13th.
Can you hear? Okay. This is microphone. Thank you, Madam President. I want to stand up to support the Alderman from the 2nd, not because of whatever reasons people are saying he should not be, him not being there or whatever, but this is somebody that can think logically and not listen to what other people tell them to think. And that's what we need. We need to quit having people be the ones that follow whatever people are telling them how to think, how to feel. He doesn't take things personally. He doesn't attack people. His job is not, as an elected official, to humiliate and disrespect women. And I think that he would be great in this position because he always thinks with a level head and a business mind. So it makes a difference when you're in a leader position and you are a leader. A leader does not make things personal. Again, they don't take things out of context. They don't look at how they can humiliate people, but they think logically and they try to ensure that when they don't agree, because I guarantee you, it's things that me and Tom don't agree on. Me and the Alderman from the 2nd, we don't agree on. But you know what? Nobody knows about it in this room but me and him because he's respectful. And he makes sure that he gets his point over and I get my point over. And sometimes we have to be grown-ups when we're at the Board of Aldermen. And I have not seen that in quite a long time, us being grown-ups. And people keep saying, the progressives keep telling us, people are watching. People have been watching me for a long time, so it doesn't make a difference about them watching me because I'm going to do my job. And so it's not a show for the media. It's not a show for publicity. It's a job. And I think Tom will serve us well in that job to do the job that we're going to elect him to do. So I encourage everybody to think as an adult today and pick someone that should be able to do the job and not make it personal and cause a divide even deeper in our Board of Aldermen. Thank you.
Need further discussion? Alderwoman from the 12th.
Thank you, Mr. President, Madam President, and members of the board. Also, I heard the Alderman from the 14th talk about diversity. Let's see here. How many straight white men do we have as a leader at this board? Let me see. 0. But 1, 2, 3, 4 white men, but only 4, 5 white men. And we only can have, no disrespect to the gay population, because I was supporting you before any of you all came down here. But we also can have straight white men, okay? So what is wrong with that? We got all women on ENA, so white men get to be counted. Now, this is not the only discussion I've had with the alderman from the 2nd, because when we talked about ARPA, he will tell you that I said, I think the 2nd Ward should get some of that ARPA funds, because you leave people out. I don't like leaving people out. So if we're going to look at diversity, then one of you gray men need to step down so we can have a straight man, okay? And since we only have a gay black man, that would be you, alderman from the 3rd. I don't want to intend for you to do that, but if the alderman from the 14th is going to talk about diversity, we don't have straight white men, and I want them to also be part of the leadership. And I'm going to form that caucus that you talked about, Alderman, the Common Sense Caucus. I'm in now because I see we need one. Thank you, and thank you again for agreeing to us to let your name be submitted and run for office.
Any further discussion? Alderwoman from the 1st.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I rise in support of the alderman from the 14th filling this role. I've had many times where I've disagreed with him, and every time I've disagreed with him, it's been respectful, and we've been able to talk it through. We don't seem to hold anything against each other and continue to work well together. I have plenty of good things to say about the alderman from the 2nd as well, but I am going to support the alderman from the 14th. And I appreciate the people who do the same.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, so the way that this vote will work is we have 2 motions on the table, one for the alderman from the 14th, the other for the alderman from the 2nd. We will first take a vote on the alderman from the 14th since he was nominated first. You can only vote in the affirmative for one candidate. Otherwise, we could end up in a tie. So we'll call the alderman from the 3rd.
Thank you, Madam President. I believe last time we had folks respond with the names that they're supporting when we had 2 candidates that were nominated.
Yes, that is correct. In conferring with the clerk, because we have different motions for both folks, we would have to take 2 different votes.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
So with that, you can only vote in the affirmative for one candidate. We will first take up the alderman from the 14th. If Madam Clerk would please call the roll.
Alderwoman Schweitzer. Alderman Oldenburg. Alderman Cone. Alderman Narayan. Alderman Devoti. Alderwoman Velasquez. Alderwoman Sanye. Alderman Browning. Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. Alderwoman Keys. Alderwoman Tyus. Alderwoman Boyd. Alderman Aldridge.
Proud aye.
President Green.
Aye.
9 aye votes, 4 no votes, and 1 voted present.
With that, we will now take a vote on the alderman from the 2nd. If Madam Clerk would please call the roll.
Alderwoman Schweitzer. Alderman Oldenburg. Alderman Cone.
Present.
Alderman Narayan.
You can only vote in the affirmative on one candidate. Okay. Right.
Alderman Devoti. Alderwoman Velasquez. Alderwoman Sanye. Alderman Browning. Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. Alderwoman Keys. Alderwoman Tyus. Alderwoman Boyd. Alderman Aldridge.
Nope.
President Green.
Nope.
Five aye votes, 5 no votes, and 4 voted present.
With that, Alderman from the 14th is the new assistant floor leader. Congratulations, Alderman from the 14th. That concludes miscellaneous and unfinished business announcements.
Friday, April 25th, 2024, full board meeting in the chambers at 10 a.m.
Further announcements? Any further announcements? Alderwoman from the 10th.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I just want to announce that Forever is doing a survey currently about updates and improvements to the boathouse. The survey is still open. I have the link that I can share with you directly, or you can go to the Forest Park Forever page. They want to hear from us about our experiences there, again, to make much needed improvements in keeping in line also with the vision and the mission of the boathouse in Forest Park. So again, you can go on Forest Park Forever's website, or I can send you the link personally. Please share it with your neighbors and networks. It's important that our voices and our constituents' voices are reflected in the survey. Thank you.
Any further announcements? Any further announcements? Alderwoman from the 1st.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I would like to announce a very special birthday today. It is Assistant Christian Bishop's birthday. Happy birthday, Christian.
Any further announcements? Alderman from the 9th.
Thank you. Just want to announce that there will be a 9th Ward Town Hall on April 30th at the Dogwood in the Grove. It'll be starting at 6 p.m. and our special guest speaker will be Dr. Mati. So please come and enjoy an hour with us on April 30th at the Dogwood and hear some legislative updates and get to hear from our special guest speaker. Thank you.
Alderman from the 3rd.
Thank you, Madam President. I would like to ask for a moment of silence for Pope Francis' passing.
If we could please stand for a moment of silence to honor the passing of the Pope.
Thank you. I also want to take a point of personal privilege and note that today happens to be my 16th anniversary. I was sworn in to the Board of Aldermen on April 21st, 2009. I think before Mr. Bishop might have been born. I'm kidding. So I brought some homemade cake and key lime pie that's in the kitchen area for everyone to enjoy. Special recipe, enjoy. And then also, we've got a lot of April birthdays being celebrated, and am I stealing your thunder? Okay, I will defer that to the Alder Lady of the 10th. But thank you, everyone, and enjoy the confectionaries.
Alderwoman from the 10th.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. After we celebrated Christian's birthday, it also made me make sure I want to celebrate someone else too. Shane Cone, our colleague Shane Cone, celebrated his birthday just last week on April 16th. So the 16th, this is sweet 16 year, right? His birthday is on the 16th. This is his 16th year anniversary of working. So congratulations and thank you for your service, your proud service, right? Authentic service, Alderman Cone.
Alderwoman from the 7th.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I didn't want to have the sinkholes as my guest. I just thought that would be weird. I think it's weird, too, now to follow up on such a positive note. But I did, I know there are many members of our community that are and watching. And I know that we are seeing sinkholes and just like a literally crumbling infrastructure happening all across the city right now. So I just wanted to speak up and just let you all know that we do see that, we are aware of that, and I hope that it will just help everyone to kind of center why it is important that we discuss infrastructure, why it is important that we are in constant communication with both MSD and other utilities that are impacting our streets, and just make sure we know that it is an issue. I know there's one in specific that is at 3100 Potomac that is in the 7th Ward. If you have any questions about that, any issues, please feel free to reach out. And just wanted to say, like on public record right now, the standing is that it is between the city councilor and the property owner, and they are trying to figure things out before they go the court route. I think residents are getting a little impatient and are really looking for the city to escalate it as soon as they can, as much as possible to get an action. This has been an issue since 2017 and just kind of been getting the back and forth since then, which predates me. But I wanted to certainly make sure that I speak to that and take this moment to acknowledge that, and those in our community who are having to drive by and walk over and push strollers and have disabilities and are having to navigate some of these struggles in our streets that are serious public health and public safety hazard.
Alderman from the 14th.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I also would like to congratulate my proud Alderman of the 3rd Ward for his 16 years and also his anniversary. I appreciate the walls and barriers you're knocking down and the doors that are opening. And for everyone back home, hate never wins. And remember to always be your authentic self, like the Alderman of the 3rd Ward has always been, and probably encourage more people to step up and speak out and to not be scared to do things that has took a lot of people's lives for the exact thing that you have done by paving a way. And there's a saying that Mama Ruth say, if you can't love yourself, you can't love nobody else. So thank you, Alderman, and congratulations.
Any further announcements? Seeing none, I do want to make one announcement now that the rules have passed. Reminder that each standing committee's chair will be selected by leadership from a pool of nominated members. To be eligible, nominees must have been a member of the board for at least 2 years. Nominations need to be submitted in writing to leadership for up to 48 hours following this meeting, and self-nominations are accepted. Selections for committee chairs will then be made within 48 hours of that nomination deadline, and each member can only serve as a chair for one committee. You will receive an email from leadership directly after this meeting, and please reply to all 4 members of leadership with your nomination so we can get moving on this process. Thank you. With that, Alderwoman from the 10th, you are recognized on the motion to excuse.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. All members were present this morning.
Alderwoman from the 10th, you are recognized on the motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I move that we adjourn until Friday, April 25th, 2025 in the Board of Aldermen chambers at 10 a.m.
It's been moved by the Alderwoman from the 10th, seconded by the Alderwoman from the 7th, that we adjourn until Friday, April 25th, 2025 in the Board of Aldermen chambers. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned.
Yeah, let's play it. Okay, I'm with you when you're right.